All right. How's it going, Channing?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to finally start using this expensive-ass equipment for some reason and get to chatting about whatever it is we want to talk about. So how do you want to do this? Have you thought about any names recently? I know you had thought of some, and I had, but I don't know if it really matters that much.
I don't know. I just kept playing around with the same ones, like the alliteration, just for fun. I don't think I seriously came up with like anything really.
Yeah, I got to the point last night where I was like, I'm just gonna call it the podcast. So welcome to the podcast. I'm Joe, and Channing is sitting right ahead of me. Do you want to introduce yourself as far as your? I mean, do you even want to give your full name? I don't know how anonymous this needs to be. Are we going to talk about like? There's really nothing we could say other than getting us fired. That would be a problem. Like we could, talk about whatever. So
I imagine first names would be just dandy.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe if we get famous, we can start throwing our last names out there and really plugging it. And, getting into it. Right on.
So you So I think we should start by saying, why are we doing this podcast? Why are you interested in doing it, and why do you think that it's a good idea, or why do you think it'll be worthwhile? Because we could just have conversations by ourselves and enjoy that, but why should we put them on the internet? Why should we record them at all?
I think that we typically tend to have very interesting conversations that I mean, I don't know everybody in the world, but I feel like a lot of people probably don't have as in-depth conversations as we do, or really explore and analyze things quite as much. I feel like we're both really analytical people, and we have a lot of opinions, and so I think it's fun to sit down, record them, get them out there, and I'm sure we'll gradually find other people who find these things interesting as well. So instead of just talking about it, throwing it out there, and then it just goes away, now you're going to have a permanent record of it in a sense. I don't know. I just think it'll be a cool little side hobby to do, and if it becomes something more, awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I think that when you have interesting conversations, you feel like maybe some people might benefit from them, or you kind of wish that people were interested in them. And I definitely enjoy the conversations we have, and then maybe this is just an opportunity to have more of them and to focus on what we like to talk about instead of just having the 2 seconds in between when we're busy and things like that. It gives us a little more opportunity. Do you listen to any podcasts, or are you familiar with how that works and everything? Because I do. I listen to podcasts every day, but I don't know if you're into those.
I don't. I actually just recently started kind of listening to them more and more frequently. But for the longest time, I didn't even really know what they were. I didn't realize it was a thing until maybe a year ago, and then I was like, oh crap! I didn't know people really did this. I didn't really understand what it was. But no, now that I have understood it, and I listened to the one that you and your brother did a few weeks ago.
Sure.
And I was when I was listening to that one, I was like, oh, this is cool. I could do this. It's something that I would enjoy sitting down and having conversations with with people. I just didn't realize it was something people were interested in, just listening to other people talk about stuff. But I don't know. It's cool. It's definitely something that I will be listening to more and more, but I'm familiar with how they work and what they are now. So
sure. To me, it's like the YouTube of talk radio. So it's probably a little bit less expensive to do something because you're only dealing with audio, as far as hosting and preparation, recording. I got all this recording equipment, but you wouldn't have to do this. You could just use a computer and a headset that you had with a microphone, and you could just record using that. So I think it's definitely got tons and tons of people involved in getting their message or expressions across, just like YouTube has, but YouTube has obviously more people involved, and I think there's more people doing YouTube. It has a wider audience than podcasting. If you ask people about podcasting, a lot of people don't even know what it is, but I think that it's growing popularity-wise, and I love it. I think it's great, and it's so free, and you can say whatever you want, and you can do whatever you want. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I feel like the fact that it's free helps a lot. I mean, that's probably kind of what spiked YouTube too.
Sure,
is it started as a small service and then just grew and grew, and you can get on there and watch whatever you want for free. And then so I feel like podcasts is the same thing. And podcasts, it's more on the go. Like if you're walking, riding a bike, something like that, you can just throw this in, listen to people chat about something you're interested in. You can learn things. So it's cool. It's a more like mobile, visionless YouTube.
Yeah, visionless. I guess you have to use your imagination, like with books. That will. I definitely want to introduce. Because a lot of people probably don't know that. Obviously, nobody knows this. I'm not even going to put this out until a little while after we record it because I want to get a backlog of recording so that I can have a little bit more consistency when they come out. So I'll have to dedicate, a good amount of time to making sure that this is consistent, or else nobody will be interested. But anyway, you have written some books.
I have. Yes.
Which is pretty awesome. And you've written quite a few books, and you're always writing. You've always been a big writer. Can you tell me and just introduce a few of the titles and where people can pick those up if they're interested, and maybe just a little bit about what they're about?
Okay. Yeah. So they're all available through Amazon's Kindle service. So you can just literally search my name, Channing Cornwall, and it'll pull up. I have an author's page on there with a little mini biography and my whole bibliography of things that I've written. But I actually started it was actually right out of high school that, strangely enough, those books, the Aragon books, I remember everybody was like raving about those around the time that I was getting done with school. And I was like, I'll check it out. What's the rave? And then I read through the book, and this might sound kind of douchey, but I was like, really? Like, this is what people are into? Like, I could write something way better than this. Like, this is not that good. And then, I've always been a fan of writing. Ever since I was a little kid, I would actually staple notebook paper together to make like a little makeshift book. And then I would just write random little stories that were only like 4 or 5 pages long. And then I did comic books for a little while too. So I always had like that creative writing process ever since I was a little kid. And then in high school, I wrote plays, and our school performed those a few times. And so that was like another kind of entryway. And then I wrote poetry during that time as well. And then it was just like after high school, I was, done with school, and I had a summer to kill before I went to college. And then I read that Aragon book and was like, whatever, like I can do something like that, not a problem.
Fuck Aragon.
And so then that was when I wrote my first book, which I didn't even title it until I was like completely done. And then I had to split it into 2 books because it was so ridiculously long, called Sorrows. So part 1 and part 2 are on there. They're pretty, I feel like if I went back and read them now, I probably wouldn't like them at all because I wrote them when I was like 17, and I was learning a lot about the novel writing process. So I feel like they're pretty solid for like a young adult audience. They probably wouldn't be as critical of the writing style. And but the stuff I've written now, I actually take a lot of pride in, which last year I finished essentially my 3rd novel, which is Kingdom in the Sky. And then during that same year, I started on a novella called Desolate Pages, which is all about like purgatory and a man's journey to figure out what happened to him and to reconnect with his family. Kingdom in the Sky was kind of like an experiment. It's like a mystery noir thriller, but it's set in like a kind of a fantasy setting. And I wanted to have like Western style shootouts. So the main character uses like a revolver. So I wanted to like blend a bunch of genres together. And it's about like a private investigator who goes to this city that's been built and like literally flies around the world. Because the planet Earth, whatever, it's not really set in like any real place, but the planet below the surface is like in this kind of huge turmoil, and so people that wanted to escape the turmoil went to this. They built this city, and it just kind of flies over the surface away from all this war and violence. And the city's called Exodus, which is, if people are familiar with the definition, is to escape by flight. So it just fit really well.
By flight?
Yeah. It's usually to be like fleeting, typically in flight.
Oh,
so,
really?
Like through the air.
Yeah.
So that's what that book is. It's just like about one man trying to go find this girl that's been kidnapped up there. Or not kidnapped, but she's gone missing, and she's the daughter of one of the lead founders of the city. So it's like a really high priority case. So it's pretty good. I like it a lot. I feel like it's another thing where it was the first like mystery thing I ever wrote, and
that's cool.
I feel like if I went back and read it, I would probably nitpick it, but that's probably the case for anything that anybody writes.
Of course,
ever.
yeah.
But I mean, I wrote those two, and then last year I went for a little bit more low-profile stuff. I did a book of poetry that I've just a collection of stuff I've written over the last few years, almost all the way back to when I was in high school. I just kind of compiled it all together, and then I wrote a collection of short stories, which was fun because I've never really done much in short story writing. I kind of went from writing plays to writing novels, and then I never did the middleman. So it was fun to go back and experiment with like different writing styles and different perspectives and things like that in shorter time frames. And it taught me a few more tricks as far as getting more information across with less time in writing. Instead of spending a bunch of time explaining things or describing things, you kind of have to get to the point quick, because that's the whole purpose of a short story, is just to be something like bite size. So that was a lot of fun too. And then now I just started my new novel project, which is called tentatively In Romantic Dreams, which is kind of a classic like haunted house story, but it's also about a couple trying to salvage their marriage after their child is stillborn. And so the wife is, I mean, obviously both of them are like heartbroken, but the wife is just in total almost like a shutdown, and the husband is doing his best to get her back on track and salvage their marriage. He doesn't like want to give up on her, and so they essentially move out of they come from Nevada, and they move to a small town in Oregon and buy a house, and he's a school teacher, and she writes music, and so it's just about them salvaging their marriage, trying to repair things, as well as, of course, the house that they moved into is haunted.
That should make it easy.
So, yeah, exactly.
That should
help. But I wanted to explore not just things being haunted, but I was actually originally the story was going to be about a succubus trying to woo him away from her because she's like not. It's not that she's not interested. She's just so depressed that she can't satisfy him as a wife, like physically, emotionally, all that stuff.
Right, she's not there.
Exactly. So. And so originally it was about a succubus, and then I don't know, I just couldn't, it just didn't fit or work like I wanted it to. Yeah. And so it still is like the same idea where he's being visited by a woman at night in his dreams. And then she is actually being haunted by like these souls of tortured men. And then it kind of is like this whole like backstory about what happened there between all these people. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's fun. I haven't written like a straight horror thing before, so it's another kind of experiment for me.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So you have a few different genres that you're trying to knock out, so you can play around with different ideas and different things.
Yeah.
Have you ever done any nonfiction other than, I think, poetry is kind of a more it's not nonfiction, but it's not really fiction either, right? Poetry is more expression, more artistic, kind of
like emotions you're feeling in the moment while you're writing it, kind of a thing. But I've never really written anything straight nonfiction. I feel like I pull tons of elements from my life into my stories, like Desolate Pages. Like literally, the part of that book is written in flashbacks. As the main character he's collecting these like blank sheets of paper to fill in his memories to figure out what happened to him, why he ended up in purgatory. It's like a story of redemption. And so, but every time he finds one of these sheets of paper, it plays a memory from his life. And all those memories are literally memories from my own life that I wrote about. So in a way, like the story is about my wife and myself a lot. Like all those moments between them are things that my wife and I actually went through together.
Wow.
Except for like towards the end, some other things happened, which was like a future that hasn't happened for me, obviously. But so I mean, in that sense, I have some like a minor nonfiction. But I guess like I feel like anybody who writes probably. It's almost like autobiographical in a way. Like you always like write about what you know. You're not going to just write things you have no idea about. You stick with what you know, and then you build on it and change things around a little bit.
Right on. It's funny that your current novel that you're working on is about a family from you said Nevada, who is trying to salvage a marriage by moving to Oregon, which is what my parents did, similarly enough.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
They lived in California. They were really close to getting a divorce. They already had kids, and Southern California, so really hot. And then they moved to Bandon, Oregon, not to a haunted house or anything. But I think that the metaphor of a haunted house and a tumultuous marriage or a tumultuous That's a tough word.
Yeah, you got it. Bill. You got
it. To say is the metaphor of like it almost like a tumultuous relationship is kind of haunted because it's usually haunted by the past, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
they had a stillborn kid, and that's haunting her, obviously horribly. He's trying to move on. They move for some. I don't know why moving is a tendency of people to like get out of the environment, like the environment's the fucking problem.
Actually, in the book,
is there like
they
a
actually,
justification?
Well, they're moving to Oregon because that's where their families are, and
Sure.
so it's like
got to be a reason.
They're moving back for the extra support of their family. Like
okay, that
they
makes
know
sense.
lives
Sure.
in Oregon,
Sure.
And so it's just like a fresh start.
Yeah.
All their memories are at that apartment, all these things. And part of the book is actually about her letting go of that. Like one of the things that she insists on is all these things that they bought for their baby.
Yeah.
To get prepare for it.
It's interesting.
She refuses to let it go. And so part of the story is about their healing process as well as dealing with the haunting and like her letting go of all these things that they just don't need at the moment.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to get her to let it go, but he's trying to be understanding. And something else I was actually wanted to explore with the book is I feel like when you have a third party as like a seductress in these types of books, that the male typically gives in or gets really, really close to giving in. And I wanted to write a story where the man is like faithful and really loves his wife and is like, and that's part of what enrages the spirit is that he's turning her down. He's like,
oh, okay.
At first he's just like, oh, this is a dream. You're not real. But then the more it's happening, the more real it is. And then he's just like, no, I love my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it'd be cool to do a spin on that. I feel like men typically in stories like that are painted in a fashion where they become unfaithful. And then that is the conflict that they deal with later, that they try to go back on it. Or
it's almost a given that the guy's just going to give in to, especially if it's like a justification, like if the marriage isn't going well and the woman isn't there for him, in whatever way, then, the man almost has the right to like it's almost like justified, like, oh, well, you weren't there for me, so I found this other woman was, and she was giving me attention. It gives men kind of a weak will toward infidelity, which is probably true, but I don't think it's true every time, and it's not just men that go through that kind of stuff too, and it's still really important for for them to work that out based on the reality of what's going on with her too, like the actual wife. There is obviously an issue that needs to be dealt with. So obviously that should happen before he just goes off and just leaves her and goes with somebody else. I mean, maybe that'll be better for him. Obviously not if it's a fucking spirit, but
yeah, right.
Kind of
so that's a tough
talking about it. A bit of a metaphor for reality. Right on. Well, I appreciate all the information. I didn't know a lot about that stuff. I haven't had a chance to read. I mean, I've had the chance. I haven't done it because I'm lazy.
Taking the time.
And I don't read a lot. I've read a few of the poems that you had in the collection of poems. I thought that was great. And I'm kind of always impressed with the amount of dedication you have to writing. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be a writer. I want to write a book one day. You're 25, right? Mm-hmm. And you've already written, 3 or 4 full-length?
Yeah, 3 full ones.
300 or 400-page novels.
Short story collection.
Short story
6
collection.
Things all together, basically.
Sure, and they're all available for sale on Amazon, which is awesome because what's the point if nobody ends up getting them?
Yeah.
Or you don't have, people don't have access to them, then they just sit on a shelf or something like that. And it's cool that you have the internet to try to get that out because ultimately...
If it wasn't for the internet, they wouldn't be out. I mean, I've written tons of query letters to agents and stuff to try to get like a real publishing deal, but man, there's like millions of people in the world trying to do that. It's just... So, I mean, Amazon's just a good way to get it out now, and every time I finish a new project... I write a new query letter and push it for a while, and one day I might get lucky. But at least, it's available. It's cool that people can read it. A lot of people I know are like, what, cool, and then they go out and buy it right away and then talk to me about it. It's really fun. It's nice to hear back from people after they read them, get feedback and things like that.
Yeah, and it's super cool that you have a hobby that is both difficult and a passion of yours. So it's not just, it's a hobby, but you wish you could just do that, I'm sure, because who wouldn't want to just do what they love? But you didn't let the fact that you have a full-time job and the fact that you have, you're married and have a dog,
She's a hand. She's like a child.
Yeah, of course. And so when you a lot of people just let that get in the way. They're like, oh, but I'm too busy, blah, blah, blah. You're not fucking too busy. You have plenty of time in the day. And if you really
do it,
exactly,
you'll find time to do it. So
that's
just all that there is to it.
Yeah, and I think people talk out their asses when they talk about things they want to do and never do them. A lot of times it's just they want to seem like the kind of person who does the things that are epic and awesome.
Like a social title or something. Well, I'm a writer. What do you do, man?
Yeah, and see, and you don't go around telling everyone that you're a writer because you're still working on it. You're still, interested in learning how to be a better writer. You're not just going to go around being like, I'm a writer. I'm plenty accomplished. Yes, you should probably learn from me and all that shit. So that's good. I'm sure a lot of people are like, I'm a writer, and then you're like, what have you done? And they're like, oh, I published one thing in the Oregon. Whatever that Oregon
like
paper
6 years
is.
ago.
Yeah,
I've been chipping away on a novel.
Yeah, not that that's bad necessarily, but it's kind of a perspective that people don't necessarily take very seriously when you say it out loud. Right on. Well, let's get into defining a shitty word of some sort, or let's talk about what's a interesting word we can talk about that you've been thinking about. Anything in particular? It's hard when you're not in the midst of conversations.
I know. I feel like you hear somebody say, and then you're like, dude, you didn't use that word properly at all, or do you even know what that means?
Right.
I feel like you just heard that somewhere, and now you're just throwing it in your vocabulary.
They use a phrase incorrectly, completely.
I think you could almost start with the word literally. I think that is like literally the most commonly misused word. Almost so much that I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually just change the definition in the dictionary.
I think
to literally meaning like a literal thing, but also not really. Like
I thought that you told me or somebody else told me that they changed the definition in the Webster's dictionary that maybe it's irony or something that they changed to allow for it to be used in the incorrect way. Like they're just like in colloquial, conversations, people use it this way. But this is the, this is the original
I know, it's
definition.
kind of like the word ain't. Like I grew up and everybody was like, that's not a word. But now it just at some point people were like, that's a word now. It's official.
Ain't. Yeah. It's a contraction, isn't it?
Well, but it's a contraction for something that doesn't exist.
It's a contraction for something that doesn't have an A in it at the beginning.
Yeah, because
isn't it?
Aren't is are not. Ain't would be...
Ain't is isn't.
Yeah. But I just mean like it would have to be two words together for that to work.
I wonder if it ain't. It ain't a word. It's got to be a bastardization of are and is.
I think
because people get those mixed up anyway.
Yeah, I think it was just like almost
fucking
like
tenses.
I always feel like those words start out of just laziness. Instead of somebody just being like, that isn't correct, they're just like, that ain't right. And then you're like, what? You're just cutting out a few little syllables there, aren't you?
Yeah. I don't think it's laziness. I think it's illiteracy. It's a ignorance to like the original pronunciation. It's not that they like could say it the right way and they choose not to. They don't fucking know. They don't have a clue.
That's true, because I feel like it's typically associated with Southern people.
Yeah, a lot of those
were farmers. They didn't go to school. They couldn't read and write, so they just had like this weird funky bastardized language that they just kind of hack-and-eyed together.
A lot of Southern stuff has to do with them talking really fast and then the combination of other languages with English. Like French in Louisiana, they have a lot of French influences.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, in the rural areas, there was a lack of education, and then there's two languages, French and English, so it creates this like bayou, what do they call it? Creole?
I don't know. I'm
Cajun.
Is Cajun
I think
that's
that's
something that fits in there?
I think that's a sauce.
Or is that like its own real thing?
I think that's a type of food.
Well, there's Cajun food, but
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there is like that's associated with a type of.
I think Cajun is a cultural reference, and I think Creole is the language, is the dialect. And then you have other stuff going on. I don't know that much about the fucking South, but I know that they say weird shit.
We need to research this.
Yeah, we shouldn't have brought that up. Anyway, so literally, obviously, people use that incorrectly. But what does literally really mean then? What does it literally mean?
Literally means like that. It's like a fact, like
right.
you like this couch is literally brown because it
Right.
is factually a brown couch.
Right. You could say the couch is brown, but I think when you're saying the word literally, you're trying to
Like emphasize.
You're trying to
like
somehow. You're trying to differentiate from the conversation where you say something outrageous about the color of the couch. Like you could say, "Man, this couch is like you could say something that wasn't true, and then you'd be like, "No, it's no, I don't even know. It's literally brown." It's almost unnecessary.
Yeah, no, I think it is. It's like the word "really"
Yeah.
or "super." They don't mean anything really. I mean, and I just use the word
not
really.
Well, there's a difference between saying that's real and it's really big, or that's really awesome, because you're trying to say you're trying to. Huh?
I think that would stem from a lack of vocabulary too. You can't think of the word like humongous or gigantic. You'd be like, that's really big.
Right.
Because you're just trying to make it's big, but it's more big than a normal big.
Yeah. Well, how do people use literally incorrectly? I think they say things like,
"Oh, I literally almost died."
Yeah.
I literally slept for like 20 hours.
It's hyperbole,
like,
right?
What are you talking about?
It's just hyperbole. It's just somebody emphasizing something to give it effect, but it's completely inaccurate.
It's just like being very melodramatic about things.
For sure. Yeah. People are
I
always
worked
melodramatic.
like a 4-hour shift at McDonald's. I literally almost died from the heat in the
literally
kitchen.
starving.
It's like, no, you were just warm and uncomfortable, and now you're home, so be quiet. Nobody cares.
Yeah. Who the fuck are you talking to anyway? Yeah, that's a funny one. I think if it reminds me of Valley Girls, where they're like, "I'm literally fucking dying right now," or that kind of like, like they need attention because no one listens to them, so they say things that make it seem more real, which would be the word literally, right? Because the word literally says this is real, and you need it matters, right? Because it's literally like this is literally the most important thing you could do with your life, right? That could be. That's obviously, if it's truly the most important thing, then that's a good statement. It emphasizes what you're saying so that somebody listens to you or takes it seriously or something. Yeah. But they say it because they know that it's going to get attention. They know that it's going to get somebody to pay attention and take it seriously, but it's really fucking stupid because they say stupid shit. Yeah. So they're just using it to like, get the person's involvement. Yeah.
Well, nobody would probably call them out on it or anything. Nobody would be like, you're not even using that word correctly. You're an idiot. Like their friends would just they would just adopt it into like their clique, and then everybody's just using the word literally for everything. Right. And then it just grows like a virus.
Yeah, like a horrible, it's like literally like a virus. Yeah, that's a good one. I think irony is a tough one, but I don't even want to go there.
Irony is so
fuck irony. I don't even need to. We can use it wrong.
Something I
use
don't
it wrong.
touch.
Who cares?
I'm just like because I don't think anybody really knows what irony is. Like I don't think anybody can explain it.
I think that it can only be explained through examples of irony, and then to try to make one up on the spot, you have to remember a good one. Yeah. And I don't remember a really good one that somebody wouldn't then be like, no, that's not irony. It's just unfortunate, or it's just
like dying on your birthday is like an ironic thing. It was the day you were born, and then you died on that same day. There's like an irony in it.
Wouldn't it be more ironic if you died from a fire set by candles on your cake?
Ooh, well, that's just
is
that
really ironic?
Like,
I don't know.
That's like super irony.
But isn't dying on your birthday just unfortunate? Just weird coincidence?
Well, it is a weird coincidence, but that's what I mean. But
I think irony is more than that. I think irony is more like two opposing things that happen at the same time that just make it really hard to like wrap your head around or something like that. I don't know. That's why I don't really want to deal with it.
I feel like that word created itselthat because there was just a void. Yeah. And people were like, I don't know how to explain what just happened. Yeah. And then
what just happened? Like that doesn't make any sense.
And then irony just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's a thing now. It's not a word. It's an organism.
I think before Alanis Morissette ruined the term or used the term in somewhat
in song or something. I'm not that familiar.
You don't know the "Isn't It Ironic" song?
No.
Oh my god.
Oh man,
okay,
I'm
you're fucking
deprived.
Weird. So there's a song that Alanis Morissette in like the 90s, and it's called "Isn't It Ironic?" And she says something like, "It's like rain on your wedding day," but that's not ironic. That's just fucking unfortunate.
It's just
shitty. It's not. It's
the
not
weatherman
irony.
sucked, or you weren't paying attention to the weather reports.
It's just
One of the two.
It's just it happens, and or like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. That's not ironic. How's that fucking ironic? It's not. So those are some lines from this. I think maybe a couple of the things she says might be irony. Like the guy waiting his whole life to take a flight and then that plane goes down. Mm-hmm. I think that's actually ironic that he waited his whole life. He's all obsessed with safety, and then he gets onto a plane to go do something like he wouldn't normally do because he's getting on a plane that he wouldn't normally want to do.
Yeah.
And then that happens to be the one in 1,000 planes that goes down that year, and he dies. And on the way down, he's thinking, well, that's fucking crazy. I think that might be ironic.
This really is unfortunate for me.
Yeah, and it's ultimately it's really unfortunate. So so she made that song, but she made the word irony uber popular. Like after that, everybody was like, "Wait, is that irony? Is this irony? Is that irony? Is this irony?"
Fuck it,
Where
irony.
before, you would only talk about the word irony if you were a writer, or if you were a poet, or if you were somebody who was interested in literary expression. You wouldn't. No normal person would go around being like, "Oh, this is irony. That's ironic. This is ironic." You know what I mean? Like it was one of those words that was more like a grammar type
sophisticated.
It's more sophisticated, which it is because it's so fucking hard to understand.
Yeah. I can see there being like a whole college course.
I bet there is.
Just explaining what that is or trying to.
I don't know. I think once you, the rule behind what is and isn't ironic is difficult to understand. I bet we could look it up and it makes sense, but then tomorrow I'd forget it and be like, oh, that's complicated.
Yeah.
I'm probably just not smart enough to understand it. So that's a couple interesting words. What else should we talk about? Are we done?
Know.
Should we just stop? How long has this been? Like 10 minutes?
10 minutes? I feel like we're going to go over longer than 10 minutes.
No, about 30 minutes.
Wow,
right on.
look at that.
Look at
That's
us.
what happens when you just talk about words and...
Yeah. So I'm going to grab a water. Do you need something to drink?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I don't actually have to stop talking, so that's nice.
Look at that.
I have a long enough cord.
So close.
So, any good movies you've seen lately?
The last one that we went and saw was A Walk Among the Tombstones.
The Liam Neeson's.
Yeah, it's like a
vehicle?
Taken movie, but way better. I actually thought, not way better, but it was just like Taken's like a high octane action movie, and this was. There's really not even that much action in it. Actually, it's more of just like a mystery thriller. It's like drug dealer's girlfriend gets kidnapped and murdered, or his wife, actually. Sorry, not girlfriend. And then he hires like Liam Neeson as this old retired cop, and some stuff happened. I don't want to spoil it too much.
He's an old retired cop.
He's an old
That's
retired
surprising.
cop, and he now does like favors for people, as he calls it, which is basically just a roundabout way of saying I'll do illegal things for money.
Okay.
But anyway, so he gets like this guy hears about him and hires him to do it, and then it's just like this whole mystery of who these people are that took her and killed her, and then it's linked to other cases and things like that. But it was just like a solid, like a noir thriller
mystery.
Yeah,
kind of
I mean,
thing.
it was one of those mysteries where it's not so much a whodunit, like, you know how those types of stories usually you're introduced to the person who committed the crime at some point in the movie,
Right.
but you have to like piece together who it was.
Right.
And this one, they actually kind of just reveal about halfway through the movie who these guys are, and they're not really like tied to anybody else like that you've met. And so it was just more interesting to see how it all plays out. So I don't know. It was cool. It was it's worth checking out if you're into those kind of movies.
Yeah, I think Liam Neeson is already. They're already advertising another Liam Neeson.
Yeah, Taken 3.
Is that actually called Taken 3 though?
Taken 3. It's Taken 3, but I think they take out the E and put a 3 in there, so it's Taken 3, but like all cool and stylized.
Take 3N.
Take 3 in.
Yeah, I saw like a picture of a new movie, and I swear it's not even another Taken movie. I
mean,
swear there's
in
another
else.
movie that he's got a gun in his hand in the picture, and he's like running around trying to kill people.
I think you're describing Taken 3.
That
sounds
really
sounds like Taken
it could
3.
could be anything really. I'm excited to watch that. I just watched The Equalizer, and it was way sillier than I was expecting.
It was based off a TV series.
Oh,
which
really?
I didn't know that. Yeah, somebody. It must not have been crazy popular because I'd never heard of it. But yeah, somebody. I think it was like a review or something I read. It was like a resurrection or reboot of that. Which I think is based off a comic book.
It seems like a comic book.
Yeah.
It's a very he's essentially a superhero who is becomes a vigilante, even a reluctant vigilante. I thought it was just going to be about him avenging the girl, the prostitute girl. And it ends up being he does that. That's like the main story, but he also helps a couple other people throughout the movie with other nefarious, like bad guys trying to extort them and stuff like that. It starts off as a pretty serious. I mean, it's serious throughout the whole thing, but it gets really silly at the end when he essentially can't be killed. He's just the best martial artist. He reads a room.
80s action stars who could kill 100 dudes without.
Oh yeah, he kills 100 dudes without a weapon. Like he doesn't go to the scene with a weapon. He just will take other people's weapons.
That's a lot of confidence
and
to
use them.
Just roll up with a button-up shirt and a watch.
Oh yeah, he's got the watch that he times himself at the beginning and tries to. They don't really explain any of that, but obviously it's just like a character point that he's so disciplined that everything he does is not only like perfect and clean, it's also timed, so it brings in like that he's just uber on top of things.
Wasn't he like a retired or something, right?
He's a mysterious black ops retired guy who has a new identity.
Those are the best characters.
And then it turns out that he faked his own death, and it's a little vague on why he's so good at what he does, but he's the best. I think it's really just he's just the best actor at being in those parts because he's fucking Denzel Washington. But it was fun. It was just a little sillier than I expected. I thought it was going to be more like Man on Fire.
Man on Fire was so good. That's what I thought. The moment I saw the trailer for the first time, I was like, that kind of just reminds me of Man on Fire. Which that was a lot more. I feel like that was not crazy realistic, but pretty close. I mean, he gets messed up in that movie by the end of it. So
yeah,
he's not invincible or anything.
No, not in that movie.
Yeah.
It's much more realistic
and
much better in the way of story and acting and
because he had
cinematography.
An alcohol problem in Man on Fire, and I don't know. It's always cool to see characters that have some kind of flaw. It's become a really popular thing, actually. Culturally. I feel like in the 80s you had your action stars that were impervious to almost everything.
They were like G.I. Joes.
And as time has gone on, I was reading something not that long ago that was kind of interesting. They were talking about how 80s action stars were these muscular, ripped dudes who just fuck shit up. And then as you went into the 90s, early 2000s, the action stars started to change. The example they gave was The Matrix with Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's probably really fit and everything, but he's not this big, daunting guy. And then it's just kind of slowly changed to that, and then it's evolved kind of again to flawed heroes, and anti-heroes have become a really popular thing now, where they have some major flaw about them, even though they're really awesome at killing people or whatever. Which Man on Fire, he had this alcohol problem. He was clearly fighting demons from his past, but. So it's cool that they've kind of tried to add more and more depth to people or characters as they've gone on. They went from just meatheads to almost realistic people. I mean, not every movie. Like the Raid movies. That guy is fantastic at the martial arts he does. It's crazy.
Well, those are different. Those are martial arts movies. Those have they don't get too deep into the character. Usually, I mean, they kind of give you a lot of they give you some backstory of for the justification, like he was wronged, it's revenge, blah blah blah.
Well, what I mean is that he beats the shit out of so many people, especially at the end of the Raid 2. He clears out that whole warehouse, which
that's
is
fun.
I mean, he gets really messed up doing it, and it's awesome to watch.
Somehow makes it.
But you're there's no fucking way that he'd be so exhausted. I mean, when you watch real UFC bouts or fights, those guys are tired within 5 minutes of circling and trying to take each other down. And then you watch a movie like that, and I remember as a little kid, I was just I want to be a martial artist so I can do that. And then you're this is not how it is in real life at all.
Sure.
I can't take down 100 dudes and then just walk out of a room.
Yeah, and he gets like stabbed and shot and all this other shit
no
too.
Way he's even
and he's
walking.
still like able to jump 20 feet behind a couch or whatever at the end. So he doesn't get shot or whatever. Yeah, those movies are like purposefully not realistic as far as the agility and the well, I mean, I don't know. Those guys seem like they can pull off that.
No,
shit.
I'm
just
sure
not
I
in
mean,
that.
Obviously, he's physically adept enough to do it. It's just like obviously he probably takes a ton of breaks in between.
Yeah,
takes,
between takes,
gets a
sure.
few bottles of water.
Yeah,
and sit down for a minute.
Yeah. It's definitely unrealistic, but I guess that's why they get away. I mean, the same thing with anybody who's getting shot at all the time throughout a movie, or who's a perfect shot every time, or any of that shit. Which is why it's a movie and not like a documentary or whatever.
I always thought it would be
really get away with it.
Fun to write a book where you're following a character. And then he just gets ganked like 50 pages in, and you're like, "What the fuck? I thought he was the main guy."
Yeah.
And then just like it just starts following all these different characters, but it's like a realistically written like scenario.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the plot would be, but just where you're in a situation with like a group and people are dying.
Mm-hmm.
It would just be funny, or just like a story. I was thinking for like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like what if they started making games that the game really just ended? Like when you died, the credits just started rolling, and they're like, "You fucking failed, dude. Sorry."
Yeah.
Like
kind of like Dark Souls when you die.
Like, what if you just died and
instead
the game was over?
Yeah, just like seriously, game over. Like, but they don't have game over anymore. Game over is like an old school.
No, it's like black screen
thing.
checkpoint. You get like a hint or two.
Well, it just says X to continue or something, or reload, and you just go back.
I think it's because it makes people feel just sad. They're like, "Oh, I failed at like one thing I'm trying to have fun with."
Well, I think that you wouldn't sell too many video games if it's so difficult that 90% of the population can't get through any of it. So even if it's not that difficult, but you don't have any retries.
The games are so much more like dumbed down, and they hold you a lot more. Like if you go back and try to play like an original Nintendo game like Mario, you started with like 3 lives, and you could get more, but
I mean,
you had to get through the whole game in one go. There was no save points or anything, so
for sure.
But it would just be funny if game creators just started making like a cutscene,
or
like
it's like that DayZ game where you die and you're dead, and then you have to go find your other body or whatever. But then instead of being a similar character, you have to start over. You have to start a new character with a new name. You don't have to start a new name if you don't want. You could use the same name, but you would have to recreate a new character because the other one died.
Yeah.
But I always thought a really good movie would be where like your book idea where like 10, 20 minutes in, the whole thing is just like about this one character, and then he just gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, okay. And then they just go to a new main character, and then that main character ends up, like getting shot by one of the bad guys, and then it just goes to like, okay, let's talk about the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then that guy gets arrested, and then that's the end of that guy. And then by the end of it, it does have like an overarching theme and a storyline. They try to do movies like that have multiple main characters, like Babel or 21 Grams. Have you ever seen those movies? Those are like real art.
No, I think I saw 21 Grams like years ago.
But where there has, or like even a lot of Tarantino movies like Pulp Fiction, where there are lots of main characters.
Yeah.
And so there isn't it's not a linear. It's linear in a way, but it bounces back and forth between story arcs that are all related to a main purpose, but ultimately like one of the characters might die like partway through and one of them might not, but there isn't one where it's just one person and then surprisingly like something realistic happens and they like a Harold and Kumar movie, and then instead of them just going through the whole thing, at one point Harold's like, my dad is sick. My dad got cancer, and he's like, I gotta go. And then he goes, and he's just never back. And then at the very end, they're like, "Oh, what happened to your dad?" And he's like, "He fucking died." And then it's just the end of it.
It's just sad.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like actually, I remember one movie that I watched that had a really strange way of just dealing with the main character all of a sudden was No Country for Old Men. Like you were following Josh Brolin's character this whole time, and then he just gets killed by like a random, was it like a Mexican cartel or something like that?
Yeah,
like
I think so.
These random dudes just kill him, and he's just dead all of a sudden. And I remember sitting in the theater and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
like
why?
the whole time you thought that God, what's that guy's name?
Javier Bardem.
Yeah, Javier Bardem.
Was gonna kill him.
Like, it was like between the two of them,
Yeah.
and then just this random third party comes in and just like, you're dead, and that's it.
Yeah. Who made that movie?
Coen Brothers.
Coen
that
Brothers.
one, yeah.
Everyone loves the Coen Brothers, but all their movies are like that. All their movies are ridiculously disjointed, dystopian, or very realistic, but the story, the writing is very odd.
Yeah.
Didn't they do Malkovich, Being John Malkovich? Is that a Coen Brother movie?
I think so.
I
Yeah,
think so.
I know it's John
That was my
Cusack in
favorite
it.
one. And then I didn't like Burn After Reading. I didn't like No Country for Old Men. I don't like movies that are confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe I'm stupid, but I think a lot of people are like, "Oh my god, it was so artsy and different, and it. Oh my god!" But it's just annoying. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, fuck those characters. If I don't care about the characters and I don't care about the ending of the characters, there's no point to the movie because the characters are fake.
That's what I tell people all the time.
I'm just
It's
wasting my
like,
time.
if I don't like the characters, I don't get into it. I don't like
I
it.
don't
Like,
care.
I never got into Breaking Bad. I was like, these are
Yeah.
people. I get at the beginning why he was doing it. Like, he had cancer,
Yeah.
he's trying to make money. I was like, whatever, it's kind of justifiable. But as it goes on, he's just making increasingly poorer and poorer decisions. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy is terrible. He should just die. That'd be
I
the
think
best thing
it's-
for his family
It's
right now.
it's the train wreck theory of character creation. It's essentially we took a really nice guy. Well, we don't even know if he was a nice guy.
It's
He was
true,
he
you
was
just-
kind of a dick. Really, ultimately, I think his character is horrible and evil throughout the whole thing, and it's only our own like. I love Breaking Bad. I love it because the acting is really good. It's got
Yeah.
a lot of surprises, very dramatic, but lots of little humorous things in it too. I think that's why most people like it. It's got a lot of different elements that you can get into. And I like the Jesse Pinkman character much more than the main character. Jesse Pinkman's the kid
Aaron
who
Paul's
he ropes in,
character,
and
yeah.
he ends up going through all these hardships, and he sticks with it. And I think it's pretty realistic, but at the same time, I didn't like the Walter White. I would not want to be around that guy. I wouldn't want to hang out with him.
if I
He's
saw that guy, I'd be like,
essentially
no, thank you.
he's going to get you in trouble. He does make terrible decisions. He's like a genius with chemistry, but really bad at business and really bad at like dealing with. No one should be dealing
Life
with that kind of
in
shit.
general.
And morally speaking, he's fucking selling meth
Yeah.
and justifying it by the fact that they make a lot of money, which
Just
ultimately,
every drug dealer probably in existence.
well, that's
I mean,
obviously
that's
they
why
make
do
money
it,
doing
right?
it. I don't know
So-
I don't even know if they even try to justify it. I don't think they give a shit. I think
Maybe
a lot
you
of
do
drug
it
dealers,
first because maybe you start off as a pretty decent guy who's just in a
Nah,
tough
doubt
spot, and then you just eventually it just bleeds away, and you're.
I think
just
they
nasty.
do the drug. They meet drug dealers. They get an opportunity to get a lot more drug than they can smoke or do. So then
Well, I
they
better
sell
start
it.
selling it now.
No,
I
yeah, I
can
think it's very
consume all this.
opportunistic. It's very it's very tempting because you can make a lot of money in a lot of drugs and selling a lot of drugs and all that. But ultimately, they're horrible. I mean, if you sell meth, you're a horrible person. I don't care. Meth is horrible. I don't mind if you make it and do it by yourself. Because then
And
you're
you
just
don't
hurting
go out and
yourself.
bother anybody,
Yeah, you're
just
not
stay in your
bothering.
room
Yeah,
and
just stay in your house, do your math.
fucking die
Fuck you. I don't
sad,
care.
shitty little death
But
by yourself.
it's not the same if you're doing, you're making tons and tons of it, and you think that you're like, oh, I'm just providing a service. If I don't do it, somebody else will. But you're doing it.
I appreciate how off rails this suddenly became. We're talking about movies now. We're just meth dealers dying.
I was gonna
Sad little deaths.
go back to the movie reference because what I noticed is that a lot of almost all the main characters of action movies that aren't like the Expendables, just like those kind of movies, or Transformers or something, like these kind of darker, like leading man actor movies, like the Taken movies and stuff, is they're essentially glorified for their lack of adherence to law. Like they're vigilantes, right?
Yeah,
You've got Batman, you've got all the Taken movies, every Denzel Washington movie. He's essentially like, the law isn't going to help us. We're men. We've got the skills. Somehow they're all trained to be the most. I mean, what would happen if Liam Neeson and Denzel Washington got into a fucking knife fight? That would be great.
I don't know, man.
It'd be a lot of fun.
That's a tough.
Expendables
tough call.
10. I think they should do that.
Right.
There's no one else in it, but just those
Just those two. Just a 10-minute knife fight, and then the movie's over.
Yeah, 10 to 20 minute knife fight, and they both die because they're both so good. Or
one of them kills the other, then the other one just dies of a heart attack from all the exertion.
Yeah, because Liam Neeson's. Yeah, they're both fucking old. It would really just be a chess game, but in their heads would be the actual knife fight. So it would be
it's
an
like
illusion.
A Sherlock Holmes scenario where he's playing out his head.
And they're talking about they're using veiled metaphors for life, but they're really talking about chess, right? And then they're like, oh, when your pawn does this and that, and then ultimately they're having a knife fight in each of their heads, and then in each of their heads, they are the winner of the knife fight, and then ultimately one of them just gets mad at the chess game and just fucking flings it off the table.
Credits just roll.
There's like, I'm not good at chess. Why are we doing this?
And then everybody in the theater's just like, wait, that was fucking it?
Wait,
like
what?
$8 for this ticket.
Yeah.
And it was
bullshit. Yeah, I think it's funny when you bring up a movie ticket, it identifies where you are in the country.
I know, right? Somebody's like $8 for a movie ticket.
Yeah, they're gonna be like,
fucking steal,
that was
dude.
Cheap as shit. Yeah, I know it's like super expensive in like California and stuff. And I
think it's only like
it's
$6.
only
actually,
$6
here.
Here.
Yeah, I don't even know
like,
why. I think I was thinking Regal Center probably when I was thinking.
Regal's more expensive, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, "Oh, I don't go to see movies. I don't have $9 to spend on a movie." And first, I was thinking that's sad because $9 not a lot of money to me, obviously. But I mean, you can't. You know, it's frivolous. You don't need to go see movies.
You can't really point that out to somebody.
Yeah. You're like, "Oh, what are you, a fucking broke?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm broke." And you're like, "Oh, well."
Oh, you got no job.
What? Yeah. But anyway. And then. But then I was like, it's not $9; it's like $6.
Mm-hmm.
But it is more expensive at the.
And then it's
theater.
I think $4 if you go to a matinee. Like
it seems like why would you ever go to see a movie at the at the more expensive place?
I don't know.
There's no amount of like if it's a $3 difference. That's a whole gallon of gas. It doesn't cost you a gallon of gas to drive 5-10 minutes.
Literally a
to this
3-mile
one.
distance between those two places. So
is it literally a 3 mile?
Okay, literally probably like 3.17 miles.
Oh, okay.
If you want to get
3.17,
the very precise mileage.
3.14, and then it would have been pi.
I'm going to travel the pi distance to get to the other place.
I have to travel exactly pi distance. But yeah, I was talking about the fact that they're against the laws, which I think is really cool because I think that's becoming a bigger theme is that the police are not your friends. The police are not going to be able to help you if you need something to get done, especially if it's like a kidnapping, a revenge type situation, which I don't think is necessarily good. You have to do it yourself in most of these cases, and I think it's a reflection of our kind of disillusionment with law enforcement, which is growing and growing. You know, I mean, every day you can watch a new video on YouTube about a police officer beating up a woman or hitting someone who's already tied up. Or I watched this really good YouTube video the other day, and it was talking about statism, which is the adherence to like a government, to just be behind a government, and to just be like, yay, government, I vote, I'm so cool, and talking about how that's essentially like a religion. It's got, its deified character, which is the government, which is a special moral, ultra moral, agent that is looking out for everyone underneath it, and we'd have to do these rituals, But then it shows all these YouTube videos of like police officers, and it was talking about how police officers justify the fact that they engage in violence by saying, well, I'm just doing my job, I don't write the laws, just pushing all the responsibility of it onto the justification of government. And I think that it's an interesting thing that's going on right now in America, is that it seems like people really don't trust cops, or some people probably do. I don't really know, but it seems like maybe they're, because of the readiness of video recording, that we're seeing what's always been going on, but now we're getting to see it more up front. It's kind of like the Vietnam War, where we didn't really know what war was like until Vietnam, when they went in and filmed everything. And then everyone watched it, and then they're like, holy crap, we need to get out of there. That is crazy. This is a horrible thing. And then I think it got suppressed a lot, because now there's some videos of like the Iraqi war and Afghanistan wars, but they're not the same. They're not just like a reporter just showing the horrible violence of everything going on. They're a little bit more edited or filtered or whatever. But I think that a lot more even almost every comic book, every comic movie is about people doing what the government can't do but should do.
Yeah.
Right. Like all the Marvel, the X-Men,
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to like save society from themselves when the police can't do anything, which is interesting because I don't know what the fucking police do. I think they waste a lot of money, obviously. But
it's interesting that you bring up that people. I feel like people don't feel safe when the cops are around. Like actually,
No.
when I dropped my wife off at work this morning, I was headed to work myself, and I had a cop like follow me for probably like
scary?
5 miles.
Why?
And he was right behind me, and I'm just immediately you're just like, I'm gonna get fucking pulled over. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what I did, but they're gonna find something.
Yeah.
And I just was like nervous the whole time. I'm like being extra cautious. I mean, not that I'm a shitty driver. I mean, I always follow the speed limit and everything, but I just feel like they're gonna find something. And
Right.
luckily, he just didn't follow me into the parking lot into
Oh, yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, that's what the funny thing is that we pay for their existence, right? We don't choose to. I don't want to, but I pay for their bills.
Yeah.
And their job is to make money for their department by issuing tickets and things. And we know that, and we know that they can do whatever they want. So if you say the wrong thing, if
yeah,
you
you're
have
not
the
gonna
wrong
question them or anything,
Right.
so-
I mean, it's so you don't even know what your rights are, and you don't have any really. I mean, you have the right after you're arrested to talk to a lawyer, but the interaction between you and the cop is completely determined by the cop. Like you can't defend yourself. You can't like stop them from touching you. You can't
you
say
just
no.
yes or yes, ma'am, a lot, and then
Yeah.
hope that you get away.
Right,
with
because you don't want to
something.
get beat by the guy or the female officer who has the right to do that, only because they don't have the right to. They just do it.
Now, do you think that, like, as far as like them, like brutalizing people, do you think that is them? I guess it would probably be dependent on the person, but I wonder if it's almost because we're all human and we all have emotions, unless you're like a sociopath. But I wonder if it's them getting caught up in the moment, and it's like, and I feel like a person's instinct when something is disagreeing with you, like a dog or another person that you're trying to talk to or whatever, like I feel like physical violence is immediately what people resort to when things aren't, like when this person or this thing is not doing what you want it to do. So I wonder if like these like beatings happen because they're like caught up in this aggressive moment, and it's just like an instinct for them to just hit this person to beat them into submission, essentially. So like I wonder if like it's like they don't get the proper training to like diffuse situations without having to obliterate somebody with a baton, or I don't know. It's just interesting.
That's a big question.
Yeah,
Obviously,
no, I mean,
don't
like,
know,
it's
man.
like
I think you're definitely on it with the instinct, because I think that no one goes in. If you go into the law enforcement, you automatically are a type of person who is interested in having control
power, yeah.
and physical authority over other people. And if you already have that, there's probably reasons for that. Probably because you were controlled, you were probably beat. You believe that that's how the world works, that when someone doesn't agree with you or when someone doesn't do what you say, that you hit them or that they hit you, or that's how violence solves things.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's how most people grow up. That's how it is on the schoolyard. That's how it is with people's parents and with people's, school teachers, with churches, up until just a little while ago, and it still goes on, I'm sure. Institutions still hit kids all the time. So I think that they're definitely the kind of people you don't want in that position. You don't want the people who were abused and who have a tendency toward violence to be the ones who have the ability and justification and power behind them to do it. Right, those are the least. That's the last person you want in charge with a baton and a gun is the kid who just wants to fucking solve all their problems with that shit. And I think that their training is who cares? You know what I mean? Like whatever their training is, it still involves escalation to violence. It still says if this happens you can shoot them, if this happens you can beat them, and the first thing they do is pull their gun or their taser or in England they don't have guns, so they have batons, and there's probably a ton more beatings in general.
I'm sure.
Which still is fucking horrifying.
But I guess there's there's a difference, I feel like, between, like, I mean, if somebody is, like, way out of control and, like, physically striking you, I feel like one good strike with a baton is probably pretty close to enough. But, I mean, these videos you see, well, I guess it depends on how much, like, meth you're on, probably.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the videos you see are them just, like, really mercilessly, like,
that and it's almost never out of self-defense. It's not because the person fucking hit them. It's because they said, I don't want to be arrested or I'm scared. They go, I'm scared. And then the cop grabs them, puts them on the ground, hits them a couple times, I mean, there's all sorts of different tactics that they use. And it's essentially just abuse so that they can handcuff you and then throw you into a car. Yeah. And that's all something that every civilian has to be aware of. Almost everyone knows that that's the case. So it's kind of hard to understand anybody who would want to be a cop, and then it's hard to say to be around anybody who would want to be. I mean, there are good cops. There are good
You're
people
not going to
who
see
are
them
cops
on the news, though.
No,
That's
exactly.
Not going to get views.
The representation is definitely stilted, and then, but the problem is that there's no way to know. There's no way to know if the cop who's arresting you, is a reasonable person who doesn't want to get into an altercation, or they're the guy who, is emotionally unstable at that time, or is just a psychotic person. Yeah. I mean, how many psychopaths or sociopaths are in the military or the police department?
Probably
if you're going to be
probably a decent amount.
If you really enjoy that kind of shit, you're going to go into those types of professions to justify, you're like, well, I love shooting critters. I like to kill things. I like to hurt people. I get in lots of fights. I drink a lot.
Escalate this to people.
Let's get justification, and then I'll just go into the military. And then they're like, well, we'll discipline you, get you all doctrinated and stuff like that.
What I feel like just makes it worse. Like,
it doesn't. How can it make it better?
A mentally unstable person, and then you're just like,
I think the only way to make it better is for them to, like, go through fucking years of therapy and try to figure out why they're such a violent asshole. Like, take responsibility. Don't just try to shove it all down into, I got a haircut and I stand up straight. Wow, I'm so much better now. I'm a more accurate psychopath. I can shoot straighter, like, smooth move.
Yeah, they're just really giving them tools to perfect the trade, I guess. And then you end up getting a movie written about you called The Equalizer.
Yeah.
And
Denzel Washington is an actor, so who knows if he's a psychopath or not. He's acting like one pretty well.
I know.
I mean,
actors are tricky.
That's what's weird about that movie is he's essentially a psychopath with a heart of gold, because he's trying to help this prostitute girl, which why help her? She's choosing to be a prostitute.
Yeah, exactly.
She's choosing to be with these people.
Life choices.
Move out of town. Go get a job at Walmart.
They usually can't for some reason. They'll get hunted.
They didn't try to justify it in it.
Mob or
there was mob involved, but I don't like. How did you get into the mob to begin with? You made a decision of some type.
I think if you were a lowly prostitute and you ran away, they would probably be like, "Fuck it, we have like 1,000 more prostitutes over here." Like that.
Why would they try to kill a prostitute unless the prostitute robbed them, and then they might go out?
I don't know.
She didn't do anything. She didn't do anything wrong. She was just a poor, sad little girl. She was like 17 or something.
They needed a sympathetic character so that moviegoers would be like, "We gotta protect this innocent little girl."
It's the white knight, damsel in distress, auto man saving literary device. That's just how it works. You see a man sees a woman in danger and he kills all the dudes who want to hurt her, even though he, like in this case, he doesn't have any like stake in her life.
Yeah,
he's not like the same age. They're not going to get together. It's more like, and then they don't explain like why he cares. I thought it would have been better if he had a daughter who died, like in Last of Us, and that's why he felt this particular emotional connection, as opposed to just, it's a girl. She's a girl.
Young.
She's a young, cute girl.
She should be in school learning.
Yeah, and it's the girl from Kick-Ass, which is weird because
Chloe
in this
Grace
she's
Moretz.
like this weak victim, and in Kick-Ass she's like this strong, young female character
Murderer of men. She kills a lot of dudes.
Yeah, kills tons of dudes. So either she's a weak
maybe that's like a sequel
victim.
To The Equalizer. She like learned to kill afterward.
Yeah, that would be funny. The Kick-Ass is a sequel. Easily could be, minus anything real involved. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's interesting. aspect of that. Yeah, I don't like when cops. I was followed by a cop today, but they're the only reason we don't like if a random car is behind you, you don't go, oh man, that guy could probably just like get me to stop out of my own free will, because if I don't stop, they'll chase me and kill me.
Yeah.
So I have to stop. They're not going to make, a normal civilian isn't going to make you stop, make you give them papers that you may have forgot at home, right? Like your license or something. Like, God forbid you fucking forget the piece of paper.
That's
the
like the moment I see a cop, I'm like, I immediately start running the checklist. I'm like, I have the fucking registration and insurance cards in here, right?
Yeah,
like,
somewhere. Is it in the glove compartment? If so, then I better either get it out before the cop walks up, or they'll think I'm grabbing a gun, because everybody wants to kill a cop, I guess, because cops are so fucking worried about it. But
it's true.
It's fucking crazy.
There was on the news actually the other morning where a guy went to reach in to grab his license out of his truck, and that cop shot him, and he was like, and the cop said he had lunged aggressively for his wallet or something.
So what?
In the cop's like dashboard camera, like the guy just turned around and was like,
just went like this.
He just like reached in, and the guy was like, ah, and just like shot him a lot, not just once. It was like 4 or 5 shots.
Why
wouldn't you just shoot them in the leg too? I mean,
cops are trained to shoot to kill.
Oh, really?
I
didn't know that.
No.
So you think that they would want to disarm somebody before murdering them?
The theory is that I think they probably want to murder people. But anyway, I think they wouldn't, not consciously. I think subconsciously they hate people. Why would you be a cop if you trusted and enjoyed people's companies? You're automatically sequestering yourself into a separate subculture that nobody wants to be around. Right?
It's true.
I don't have any fucking cop friends for a reason, like because they're not friendly. They're not my friends.
Yeah, I feel like they typically have their own little culture.
I couldn't be honest around them because they're representing a horrible situation.
Bust you probably.
Yeah.
If you
you try to be honest and then they bust you. And then if a cop does anything illegal, we're like, oh, they're corrupt cops. But really, what they're doing is like expressing a little bit of freedom in their own lives. To not just go with the thing. But damn it, what was I talking about? I was going to say something about cops. Cops.
Talking about a lot about cops.
Cops are dying. Yeah, I don't know.
You were talking about the fact that they just want to kill on a subconscious level.
Oh, no.
And then you veered off and not wanting to be their friends.
No, that's what we were just on. That was a tangent. What was the original thing? Something about like getting pulled over is not good. But whatever. I don't know. They have the they are the only ones who have the justification to do it. They're the only ones who can.
Yeah, you don't question it. You're
just
you
like,
can't.
oh,
it's a cop. I gotta
do what they say. I gotta do everything they say.
Get over.
Yeah, it's very scary. I don't enjoy seeing police officers around. You know, most of the time. But then there's a few situations where it's kind of like the only option, because I'm not allowed to defend without really, really good justifications that are probably on film. I can't get involved. I can't do very much to help other people without cops involved. Like if I get robbed or if my friend's getting hurt or something, like you kind of like have one option. You kind of have to go to the police. You don't get to just solve things on your own. You don't get to I don't get to pull a gun on someone who's trying to hurt someone. I mean, unless they're about to die, right? I have to justify myself pretty intently.
I mean, that's when you have to go buy like a costume and
pretend to be
disguise yourself and
and
then avenge people and be a vigilante.
I don't know why more people don't do that in real life.
I don't know.
I think it's because the movie is a representation of what we want, but in reality, we know the cost of doing those things. The reality is that you're going to die. You're going to go to prison. You're going to get raped. You're going to, there's not a lot of good outcomes for the actual vigilante in the world.
Well, and then at what point are you no longer a vigilante and just a criminal? I mean, at a certain point, you're just a dude running around beating other dudes up. Well, you're a fucking suit.
If you're a vigilante, you're already a criminal.
Yeah,
right. Because you're already breaking the law by going around the government and assaulting and shooting people.
It's funny.
But whether or not that's morally justified is the difference.
It's just funny. When I was a little kid, I loved Batman. He's one of my favorite things in the world, pretty much, as far as popular culture goes. But as a little kid, if the cops are chasing Batman because he's a vigilante, and as your kid, you're like, why are you doing that? He's a good guy. He's fighting all the bad guys.
Yeah.
And then I was watching this new Dark Knight Returns. It's like a video adaptation of the graphic novel that was written in the 80s. and it really like delves into the psychology of him. And he's like coming out of he's been retired for like 10 years. He's like 55, but criminals are just running rampant, and he has to like come out of retirement to try to get things right. Well, you just start to realize that he just can't let it go. That he's kind of like a psychopath himself. Like he has to beat these guys up, and masks it as like saving people, and it's justified. And they do this really good job of mirroring him with the Joker, who just kills people and causes chaos. And at a certain point, you're like, they're almost the same person. Like they're just they dress up, they go out, and they hurt people. One just justifies it as protecting them, and the other one just doesn't give a shit. I feel like they did that in the Dark Knight movie a little bit too. Like Heath Ledger's character, when he portrayed the Joker, was always kind of jabbing at him a little bit. That like they were always going to be doing this. Like he would never kill the Joker because it was against his code, and the Joker would never stop killing because that's what he does. And then it's just like they're just two crazy people battling it out forever, basically. Yeah.
Well, the Joker is always painted as a smarter crazy person. Like he's the smartest crazy person, right? He's methodical, he plans, he does things that seem like chaos but really are calculated things that are disruptive, and he's a terrorist essentially. He just causes terror, that's all he does. And then Batman is more of he's like the innocent boy who just wants things to be right, but he doesn't know how, and he's not really smart enough to like he's a smart person as a character, but his overarching like if he really wanted to save Gotham,
he would put all of his money into
he would like give people jobs, or he would try to like create charities, or he would like try to revamp government, or try to he would like try to save people in a positive way and like outreach to kids.
It was just like while I was watching this Dark Knight Returns, it was like the first time where I was like, I almost saw him as a villain himself, because you just see him as this old guy who's way past his prime that just won't let it go. He just keeps and then he ends up like building an army essentially towards the end of these people who are going to protect Gotham, and I'm just like, but you're making a gang now, and these guys are going to go out at night and beat people up. Like,
well, that's the problem.
Physically harm them a lot, and
with just revenge as justification, because what you do is you create a loop that's never ending, where you're always avenging someone's death, who's avenging someone's death, who's avenging someone's death because you killed them, because they killed this guy, but you didn't know the original story. Oh, but it was justified, and it doesn't matter because
my dad
you're
was
just
a criminal, but the Batman gang killed him, and now I got to kill the Batman gang.
Right, and you create more villains, and I think that's exactly what happens when violence begets violence. If that's the only way to solve it, why would you think that would ever get to an end point? That you would, now we don't have any more violence, but it's only because everyone's dead. Because the only people alive are the ones who
didn't fight.
who had no freedom to do anything at all, because they were afraid that you were going to get killed by one gang or the other.
Yeah.
So it's definitely how our culture and most cultures view conflict resolution. It's just, they kill us, we kill them, they kill, it's all violence. It's just win, lose. It's zero, it's just, that's just how it is. And we all just accept it, I think, as justified. Like wars are justified through the stories that were told about them, this is revenge for 9/11, or this is because they have weapons of mass destruction and we're scared, or whatever, which both ends up being lies, and all that. So definitely not a solution to any problems.
It's not.
I don't think I don't really vigilante. I mean, I don't think you have the. I mean, I don't know. Why do they get to go hurt people? Because I guess it's nice to think that somebody gets to go avenge people.
I think it's like the idea that there's somebody out there who's willing to protect you and save you when you're being wronged.
And obviously the government, who's supposed to be the one that you're paying to protect you, is actually like not doing anything and is getting paid off by bad guys, which is just true. They're always getting paid off.
I think a lot of like those comic book heroes were created during like the Vietnam era as like kind of a maybe not a protest, but it's like a rendition of those conflicts and put into like a comic book form.
Sure. Well, I think the first comics came around.
I mean, they were like in
World
the
War
50s.
I or World War II.
Yeah.
Like Captain America was a real comic.
Yeah,
book.
it wasn't like a propaganda type
That was
thing,
like
too.
World War I or World War II or something. I think it was World War II because I think he was fighting Nazis.
Yeah. Well, I think the 50s. I think was the big,
yeah, and
that was like Superman.
obviously
came
propaganda.
around and,
yeah, and I think there are ones that are even before all that.
That's how you get kids into it. So when they grow up, they're like, oh,
yeah, it's
join the
propaganda
army
for
'cause
sure.
Fucking Captain America was in it.
Yeah,
So,
no shit.
Yeah.
Oh, and he doesn't get hurt, and he doesn't have to murder people.
No,
so.
I don't want a gun. Just give me a shield.
Yeah,
no,
give me a
Just
shield.
trust me. I don't need a gun.
No,
Just give me
it's
a shield.
cool. Yeah, I know how to use it. It's cool. It'll come back to me. It's real. But yeah, I don't know.
Ba-da-da-da.
Yeah, I think the worst thing in a
Well, you have such a good conversation going, and then it just kind of you hit this spot where you're like, oh, I'm at the end here. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. It could go in all different directions, I guess.
No, it's just funny that I like that I keep saying it's funny at the beginning of all my sentences with this, but
I haven't laughed.
no, I know
At all this
that's
whole
why
time.
I don't know why
Maybe
I keep
it's 'cause
thinking
you keep
everything's so
saying
funny. I'm not laughing either,
No, it's not funny at all.
but it just showed me how naive children really are. Like watching Batman as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was like this awesome, great guy, and then now I'm watching it. I'm like, I still like him as a character, but I'm just like, oh, you're kind of a dick too. Like you're not really helping.
Yeah.
Like if you were so good at fighting crime, why the fuck is there still so much crime?
Yeah, it just gets worse. It's all just a bunch of
It's
fucking
all
bullshit.
imaginative.
But
fucking
yeah,
thing anyway. It
but that's
doesn't-
true. I mean, really, crime doesn't. I think the report. It depends on crime in reality is such a weird concept anyway because. I mean, it's a crime to walk across the road at the wrong spot.
I've gotten
So-
stopped for that before. Actually,
How?
walking to high school.
Why?
And I literally just I looked both ways because I'm smart and I have a need for self-preservation.
Yeah.
So and I remember looking both ways and I started walking and then the cop like just kind of came around the corner in the neighborhood and then just kind of like he just set off a siren for a second and then rolled up beside me and he was like, "Hey, you need to make sure you're crossing on sidewalks." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry." Like I wasn't. I'm just like,
Why?
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 Because it was important to him to let me know that
'Cause it was
sidewalks are
written
there
down?
for a reason, and I wasn't using one. I wasn't being safe. I was causing
How's that
mayhem.
not safe?
That's pure chaos. What I was doing. So it's good
Yeah.
that he stopped me. It set me
That's
straight.
fucking silly.
Really put me on a better path. I think.
Yeah, you probably.
I wouldn't be sitting here today if that cop hadn't stopped me and
No, you probably
changed
would
my
have
life.
hit by a car or something.
But no, that was like one of the times where he drove away, and I was like, "What?"
yeah, fuck the police.
Of all the things going on in this town right now, probably
Yeah.
that I'm glad that happened, and
I don't. Yeah, I can't believe.
I remember hearing people talk like, "Oh, you can get stopped for jaywalking," but I was like,
You're like, no
I
way.
probably
You
not."
tested it. You're like, I'm a
And,
fucking rebel. I'll
I
do what
wasn't
I
even
want.
I was just
Yeah, you
doing
didn't
the
even
same
think
thing I
about
did
it.
every day. He
Yeah.
just happened to be there to see
What a
me.
dick.
Um,
Yeah. So that's a crime. You're a criminal.
yeah, no, I know.
You can't. I
on my
actually heard
record.
that. I don't know what I was listening to, but essentially, every American within their lifetime will commit 5 felonies just living their life, just because it's most likely that you're going to do something that's illegal. And I guess felonies are pretty bad, but I guess there's probably a lot of things that are felonies that you wouldn't even know about. Like there's probably, I mean, we have more laws than anywhere.
Oh, yeah,
we have
I
more people in
remember-
prison than anywhere. So
I've heard of like strange
luck.
laws too in like random states
Yeah,
that were
all sorts of
put
different
into
things.
effect like in the 1800s or something,
Yeah.
and now they just have no bearing on
Yeah.
anything anymore. But they just never
you can't wear a
amended them
hat
out.
inside on Sundays and shit.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how it's only people who really want to control everybody else that creates a law that doesn't help anybody. Why can't we just like
just
deal with each other on an interpersonal basis and not
just
fucking have
be
laws
a
for
fucking
everything?
nice person.
Yeah, don't get the fucking police involved in everything that we could possibly do. I think that's a bunch of bullshit.
You should just title this particular episode like "Fuck the Police" or something.
Oh yeah,
That was
I don't
painted
get some
on
attention.
my neighbor's house in my
Was
old
it?
neighborhood before I moved. Yeah,
What?
we were we were walking back from the park with our dog, and yeah, I was just spray painted on the side of their house. It said "Fuck the police," and I'm just like,
Huh.
Wow, you're really getting your message out there, fellas. Like, what?
Yeah.
When you're spray painting that, what's the thought process? I wonder.
Well,
like,
they
this is
probably
showing them, or they weren't thinking. They were on meth.
Yeah. We'll just blame meth for everything. I guess it probably wasn't the people who own the house.
Oh, I hope not.
Right? So they were probably just putting it on there, and then essentially you have to call the cops and be like, "Hey, somebody wrote this.
Yeah.
I need somebody that, like, I have to report this as a crime.
Yeah.
And I really think you should read this because
You-
it's directed at you."
You guys explain. This is not how I feel about you personally.
Yeah.
Somebody else put this here.
I swear it was somebody else. I didn't do this purposefully to have you come here and read it, but it is for you, and I thought you'd want to read the message.
And then it's
Somebody
like an
left you a
episode of CSI where they get the
sperm.
criminal analysts in there.
they check it
There's
for
semen
There's
on
semen
the side of the
everywhere.
building.
The paint is infused with semen, so
But
they can catch them.
and then like it all comes around that it really was just an elaborate ruse for them to get the cops to their house to read
It was
this
actually
important message.
it was actually a cop that did it. Who was
It was.
it was a,
Yeah.
a jilted lover of a cop. Yeah, I think
He just jacked off all
I don't
over the
know.
side of
Is
their
it
house
is "Fuck
and-
the Police" a
I
isn't
didn't
that
know was a
copyrighted?
thing. Is it?
I don't know.
might
It was
be.
a song.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
Ice Cube did a song called
Oh,
"Fuck the
sorry,
Police."
I'm not up on my rap culture either, unfortunately.
Yeah, your 1980s rap culture. You're not.
No,
you're not into that. No.
No, this is
I
one of the
still
few things I
remember
never got into.
Yeah, that's funny. I just watched the new South Park episode, the Ebola.
Oh yeah, I literally watched
I
that before
They don't
I came
mention
over here.
Ebola the whole time.
I
but
think
they,
that the Ebola is
is gluten.
like a play on because did you hear that the first case of Ebola
Yeah,
has been
I heard
reported in
about
the U.S.
Yeah.
Well, everybody's freaking out about it, and I feel like it was kind of a play on that. Like it's minimal now, but I feel like the joke is that Ebola has been happening in another country all this time. Nobody here gives a shit because we're Americans and we don't really think outside of our
we don't
own
need
personal
to care
life.
about
exactly. But I feel like it's kind of satire on gluten being a ridiculous thing here when it's not. It's retarded unless you really are have an allergy. But in that episode, they were treating gluten like you would
Ebola.
treat an Ebola virus,
Right.
And I feel like like the
Hysteria.
Ebola, yeah. And I think it's just a joke on how America makes big deals out of really dumb shit. When there's really terrible things happening in the world, that's
yeah.
a way bigger deal.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really smart, well done episode.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ebola
It was fun.
didn't play a whole lot into it. I feel like that just kind of got tagged in there because that's just become a recent event.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird that they went with gluten because I feel like gluten was like a big topic like a year ago.
Yeah.
It was
or
just kind
even
of
like 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
I mean, I'm sure people still
Yeah.
talk about it. I don't hear about it as much as I did a while back, and so.
No, yeah.
But I feel like that's because they were on like a hiatus for 8 months or something since the end of the last season, so they probably have a lot of material. To,
well, they
kinda
probably
catch
couldn't
up
come
on.
up with another. They always take a real thing and then take one thing and turn it into like a thing that's not extreme and turn it into that thing, like gluten Ebola or
the Kickstarter episode.
the
from last
Kickstarter.
week
So
was
it's like something
very
that's not
relevant.
that big of a deal, like Kickstarter, and then they turned it into a comment about the use and racism involved in the Redskins
Yeah.
stuff. Which who gives a fuck? I don't know why that would be a story like in the news. Like
Yeah, I was
Redskins
talking
can't use
to,
their fucking thing. Who I don't. How, what? Why? Why?
I was talking to my wife about that earlier. I was
Any-
like,
yeah.
that since the inception of that team, that has been their name.
Yeah.
And now, like what?
It's also
40 years later.
any
it's a big
opinion
deal.
you have on it is stupid. It's pointless
Yeah.
and stupid, and so you force people to have an opinion on it when you bring it up as a real topic,
Mm-hmm.
and then everyone's like, "They shouldn't do it. They should do it. They can do it." Who gives a fuck? Who?
It already
I don't give a-
exists.
who
It's
gives a
like a
f-
thing already.
Yeah,
like
the Washington Redskins isn't the name of an actual motherfucking tribe.
tribe. Yeah, no, it's not. That's
So they're just saying that some people, they used to call them Redskins because they had a reddish hue to their pigment, right? I don't know if that's racist. Calling someone black because they have a black hue to their fucking skin is not racist. It's an observation.
It's like an adjective
It's an
describing
adjective.
them.
It's an observation.
as their
It's
skin
like saying
color.
you have brown hair.
Yeah.
It's not inherently racist. It could become racist if you're like all people with brown hair or black skin are this.
murderers.
Yeah, or murderers or meth addicts or something. But that's what I mean is just the fact that I could have an opinion is stupid. There's no reason. It doesn't help. It's not rational evidence. Who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter
I think
at all.
It just
It's
is because
inconsequential.
racism is such a big deal
Oh,
in this
yeah.
country. All of it
Because it's
Well, not all of a
easy.
sudden,
It's an easy
forever,
thing for
but-
people to get behind, and it's an easy thing to call out. But it's
I think
not
it's like
real
the silliest thing
most
in
of the
like
time.
slavery doesn't exist in this country anymore.
No.
Well, not legally, but there
Not
might
legally.
be sex slaves or something. But anyway,
Well, and you could debate on whether or not somebody who can't make a good living is kind of a slave to the economy, but there isn't real
slave
slavery.
in like its basic term, as in
The
you're
point is that
forced into labor, you're not getting
the
compensated.
white people, most of the white
whoa,
people.
whoa, I'm a white person. Don't
I know.
say
I'm
the
talking
white
about us.
people. Oh man,
I'm talking about us
it's getting
people.
racist in here now.
Most people don't know who I am, so saying I'm racist because I'm white is fucking racist. And then I don't own slaves. I've never owned slaves. My parents haven't owned slaves. I don't have a particular viewpoint on that's negative toward black people. I know the stereotypes that are out there. I know the difference between reality and a fucking stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's just a way to like demonize, and I don't know. I don't mean to fucking talk about racism anyway. We were talking about South Park.
Well,
Um,
I mean that.
But that was the big thing
Yeah,
about that.
no, yeah,
but
it was.
But they weren't really talking about it wasn't racism. It was more like the illogical nature of people trying to argue for something that doesn't make any sense anyway. Like oh, but we're the Washington Redskins, you're the Washington Redskins, but we don't like you using our name. And then that was like a play on the whole.
On people being upset that they were using the name.
And what Indian, what Native American?
Oh
they're
yeah,
not
no.
Indian.
If somebody listens,
What
to
Native
this,
American has the power to speak for all Native Americans? Who is that guy?
he's
curious.
like the chief, right, of their tribe. I don't know.
Of all of them,
I'll
but
just-
they all had like
An
warring
Omega chief.
tribes. They were all just like they would live in their area, and then they would just be like any other civilization where they would just like
Kill
they
somebody who
would
disagreed
kill
with
each
them.
other. They would enslave each other. They would do all sorts of things. Some of them were more peaceful than others, and
Yeah,
there
I watched
wasn't
Dances with
one.
Wolves. I'm very caught up on my.
Yeah, I know
American
all about
culture,
it.
so.
I know. I
pretty much watched that movie and was like, I know everything there's to know about Native Americans.
Which
now.
movie?
Dances with Wolves.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
was
you
like, or The Last of the Mohicans. That's real. It's real stuff.
Yeah, no.
Daniel Day-Lewis is in it.
He's
so.
full-blooded Native American.
I heard a great joke. The roast of James Franco. Have you watched that yet?
I haven't. No.
It's fucking great. I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched all the clips on YouTube
Mhm.
that I could get away with for free without having to go find it somewhere else. But it's fucking hilarious. James Franco's hilarious, and all those people who were on it were good. But he told somebody told a joke about Aziz Ansari being the Daniel Day-Lewis of doing the same thing over and over. Right, because Daniel Day-Lewis is like one of the best method actors.
Yeah.
Every character is very different than the
Mhm.
other. And he was saying that Aziz Ansari was the Daniel Day-Lewis of doing the same character. So essentially saying you're like a one-dimensional fucking person.
Oh, there's totally like actors in quotations that they're not even acting. They're just being themselves on camera. They have to be like.
Well, that or their ability to
Well,
act in different ways as different characters is just non-existent. They just act the same type of character personality.
Typecast, yeah.
Yeah.
You're just stuck
I
in
mean,
a role.
most Denzel Washington movies are like that. A lot of Tom Hanks movies are like that. A lot of John Travolta movies are like that. They aren't. But that doesn't really matter. They're still good actors. They're acting. They're doing their lines.
Yeah,
they're being emotional. They're expressing. They're creating a story through their actions, and that's what a actor is expected to do. Whereas you have, if you write a story and the character happens to have all these weird quirks and has his face missing and shit or whatever, then that's just you're gonna pick an actor that can pull that off and make it believable. So you have people like I just watched last night The Master. Have you ever seen that movie? It's called The Master. It's
Joaquin Phoenix,
yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, who is I don't know if he's underrated, but I think I've underrated him a lot. Like I think he's an amazing character actor. Like he gets the fuck into a role like crazy, and he's really good at it. But I don't know if people really see him as like that. I think they probably do, but I don't know. Like a Daniel Day-Lewis.
Did you ever watch
something.
that like documentary type thing he did where he was like pretending to become a rapper and quit his whole acting?
I
career?
hated that. I thought it was dumb.
Really? I thought it was like I thought it was
just wasn't
genius,
fun.
and I didn't enjoy watching it. Just the whole stunt itself was funny to
It's
me.
an interesting concept, yeah.
Because people believe, like he was so into it, people really believed. They're like, "Oh my god, what's happening?"
I didn't think it was believable at all.
Oh,
like,
really?
The
Because
whole
he like
thing.
went out to like public places and was like trying to rap, and like people just thought he just went off the deep end.
Yeah,
and,
I like that he couldn't rap. He wasn't good at it, and that's realistic.
Yeah.
And then I liked how
he's white.
it was like he had enough money to get into places and try, but ultimately like had no skill for it. So that was cool. And then he looked funny, and it was more like a weird like take on like white rappers or something, or people who are rich who think they can do whatever they want or something.
I feel like that's
I
what
didn't really
it
get
was.
it,
Just him being like, "Oh, I want to do something kind of funky. I have the means to do it, so I'm just
Yeah.
going to do it."
Yeah.
Like,
he wrote it and was just like, this will be fun, and I'll just try to do this. But I think he's a great actor, like in Gladiator and shit like that.
Yeah, Gladiator,
amazing.
You just fucking hate him through that whole movie.
Oh yeah, I hate him in almost every movie he's in. I think that's why I didn't give him very much credit for his acting, because I just don't like his characters. But he's such a good actor.
One of these guys.
In The Master, he talks out of the left side of his mouth the whole movie because he has neurological damage from this event that happens in the movie.
So he's like Sylvester Stallone, kind of.
No, you can actually understand him, and he's was Sylvester Stallone born in America? Is he speaking English?
Yeah, well,
All
it
the
happened
time.
actually. I don't know
Did
if
he
you're
have a
familiar
problem?
with how that happened,
No.
but I guess that it happened during his birth. They had to use.
He was too strong. He was just too buff.
Yeah,
He came out and he was like, "Ah."
But they had to use like clamps to pull him out,
Oh.
and it damaged, like it did neurological damage to the side of his face. So his like whole side of his face is numb, and that's why he talks kind of weird in that side of his foos.
His foos face.
He's kind of like
Foos
droops
book.
down just a little bit, like it's
Oh, yeah.
all neurologically just shot.
I didn't know that. I thought it was
Yeah, I read
an
about
accent or something weird, like a quirk of
it. Yeah.
his.
Well, I feel like
dialect.
he was like raised in probably the Bronx or something, because he has like
He does
that
have that,
accent,
yeah,
but
sure.
like
Or
his
Boston or something. I don't know.
inability to enunciate
Yeah.
stems from half of his face having no particular sensation.
That's probably why he decided to work so hard. Is he was just like, I already
No,
got a deficit.
because he wrote Rocky, and that was what got
Yeah.
him in. That was like his stipulations too. He wrote it and sold it, but the only way that he would sell it to somebody is if he got to play
Yeah.
Rocky, and then bam.
Well, that's great.
fucking
Yeah, I mean,
Academy
same with
Awards
like
and-
Good Will Hunting. They wrote it and they were like, we're going to be in it. So
Yeah.
fucking that's the way it's going to be. So, but
That's tough. I must be too like modest. I feel like if I wrote like a screenplay and then I was trying to sell it, I just personally wouldn't be like, you have to fucking put me in the movie or you're not getting it. I would just be like, no, take it, man.
well,
please.
if you write a good
if you want
enough,
me to be in a
Yeah.
cameo or something,
Yeah,
I'm all for
cameo.
it. But I
well, yeah. It depends on what you wrote, because
Yeah.
if you wrote it about yourself, like you wrote it like, this
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
life
yeah.
experience that I've had, I'm giving it a kind of, fictional take, but I know how this character feels. I know this, I wrote this because this is how I feel. I'm the one who needs to do that. And I think all those people were already actors. Like Sylvester Stallone was probably already taking acting classes, interested in the entertainment business. Same with Good Will Hunting guys. They were already in
Yeah, I think
acting.
Stallone
They
had
were
been
already
in like
actors.
a couple of like little
Right.
bit part things.
So they knew that
probably.
they could do it. Like as
Yeah.
opposed to me, if I was to write something, even if it was about me, I wouldn't have the skill to pull it off and make it successful. So I
Yeah.
would rather have somebody who's a trained actor do it and just do the writing or whatever.
I think, or it's just cheaper. I mean, you look at Eddie
Definitely
Murphy's
cheaper.
movies like Norbit. He just plays all the characters himself. He doesn't have to fucking pay anybody to do it. He probably wrote it, directed it, acted in it. He just threw a couple other people in there for fun. And then,
I assumed that the price of that movie was part of the issue of, like, well, we're not going to make any money, so we might as well make it cheap. Like Eddie Murphy. Didn't he do the Clumps?
yeah, like, well, that was the was that a sequel to
The Clumps came first. Norbit's way after.
No, I was thinking Nutty Professor. Wasn't the sequel like Meet the something? I don't remember.
Maybe I'm thinking of Martin Lawrence. Because he did a thing where he was a bunch of fat people. Maybe that's the Clumps. Who cares? It doesn't matter. at
Yeah, I
all.
don't know.
Um,
I just remember Big Mama's House. That was
Yeah,
great.
that's
that was just
Martin
like the
Lawrence.
African American version of Mrs. Doubtfire, but more ridiculous. Sorry, I say
but with
African-American,
no
don't I?
redeeming like story to
I
it.
know. I don't even like Mrs. Doubtfire that much. Like, I think I
Yeah.
remember liking it as a kid, and
I loved
then I when I go back and watch it now, I think I watched like half and I was like, whatever.
I don't have any desire to watch it again, but I loved it when I watched it the first time a long time ago. I watched it a bunch, but I think I was a huge Robin Williams fan, and
I love Robin
it's
Williams.
I think it's a. I don't know if I watched it now, maybe I'd have a hard time with it, but it's a great story. It's very interesting and weird and funky, and everybody. It's easy to make fun of because it's a fucking dude dressed as a woman, but he pulls it the fuck off. He's like that lady.
That whole family didn't know.
I mean, they didn't even know. They couldn't even tell.
I mean, that's something you can't even write in a screenplay. That's just
like real life.
You totally could.
Yeah. I could pull that off.
It'd be funny if every other, like, in between the lines of dialogue for Mrs. Doubtfire, it had in parentheses, act like you don't know this is your dad.
Yeah.
Act like this is not your husband.
Little acting
just
notes.
Little reminders.
Because the actors are so
Robin
shitty.
Williams.
The actors are so bad they can't. They're like, wait, I thought that was my dad.
Who else was in that movie? It wasn't Sally Field, I think, was in that movie.
I think she's the wife who is crazy.
Was she crazy?
Yeah, she like completely doesn't let him see his kids.
Oh, Pierce Brosnan was in that movie. I just remember that.
He's the boyfriend.
She was hooking up with somebody. But
he's a drive-by fruiting.
Oh man, I remember my mom's like cackling laughter every fucking time that.
Really?
Every time he said that, my mom was like, ah!
Oh, that is horrifying.
It's like clever, but not. It's something you're in your head. You're like, that's funny, but you don't.
Well, it's funny at the time,
laugh.
but it doesn't need to be repeated too many times.
I feel like it's like the number one quoted phrase from that movie too.
It's got to be from that movie for sure. Well, there's a lot of quoting from that movie because it's
what else?
Well, the whole Euphegenia, Doubtfire deer, like that's the name. People say it all funny. You have a vagina, Doubtfire. I remember making fun of it like that. Are we going to talk about a dead guy now?
I guess
you want to talk about a dead guy?
These conversations just keep.
I don't know.
We're like on a train track that's just switching around.
It's fucked up.
We just gave up on where our destination is.
Yeah, no, there's no destination. That's the point of a weird conversation. But yeah, I don't know. We don't have to.
Weird conversation.
Yeah, there's a guy named Christopher Ryan, and he made a podcast called Tangentially Speaking, and I was like, that's the best name for a fucking podcast. I can't get better than that. That's retarded.
Just write him a letter and be like, hey, can you renounce that title so I can have it, and then you can just pick something else.
Take it from you,
please.
But anyway, I don't really want to talk about Robin Williams. I mean, if we can, I think everyone's talked about it enough.
Oh no,
yeah,
I don't even remember how I got onto the track.
We all love him. He's dead. What can we do?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He had #1 movies on Netflix for like a month. So
yeah, I remember
everybody was just like the Robin Williams collection.
Yeah, it's like popular on Netflix, and it's. I actually watched a movie because it was on there. It was Good Morning Vietnam.
Oh, really?
Which I've never seen.
Really, that movie's good.
Fucking amazing.
That's
great
one of
movie.
those movies that's like a good mix of comedy and drama.
Yeah.
Like some fucked up shit happens in that movie.
Unexpected drama for sure. Really interesting.
Because it kind of starts off as like a goofy comedy, and then it just shit gets real like halfway through. You're like, whoa.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's good because
jarring.
It's kind of like MASH, and I think it came out probably a little after MASH because MASH is pretty old. You know MASH.
Yeah. I'm aware.
Yeah. Well, you weren't aware of what was it? Alanis fucking Morissette.
I know who she is. I just don't listen to her music.
Good. Don't. You don't need to. But it's like MASH in that it's funny, but it's about war, and then it gets serious some of the time, which I think is a good combination. You kind of have to have some humor in the most serious stuff, or else it's not as entertaining, I don't think. Like,
well, it's really bleak and depressing, and you're just like, this is uncomfortable.
I've been watching The Sopranos, and I had to stop because it's just so fucking dark. It's the whole show is just dark shit happening all the time. I was like, oh, I'm starting to get like depressed after every episode because it's just like horrible. Like, everything they do is horrible. Actually, I wanted to talk about The Master some more because it's Hoffman, not. Who just died?
Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Philip Seymour Hoffman. Not the other Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman, who is still alive.
I know my fucking actors. Kind of.
Yeah. But Philip Seymour Hoffman's fucking great in it. But it's about a cult. And it's such. Have you ever seen the assassination of Jesse James by the
coward Robert Ford.
Robert Ford, or the movie There Will Be Blood.
Mm-hmm.
Those
There Will Be Blood's amazing.
Those movies are very slow paced, and then they're very very dramatic. The Master is just like that, where it's just uber slow paced, really good cinematography, really good writing and acting. It's very different, obviously, than those other movies. There's not much action in it, but it's about a cult leader who is essentially like the guy who started Scientology, because it's a modern religion based on outrageous theory, and then they use like talk therapy to get people interested in it. And it's got a really interesting spiritual message. Like their whole idea is that we're reincarnated souls, and we're just living in these vessels for a certain amount of time, and all the angst and negativity that comes from experiences that our past lives had, and that goes back billions of years somehow, prior to humanity, prior to the earth, like literally billions of years, which is illogical to the extreme, obviously. But then at certain points in the show or in the movie, he gets questioned by people, and then he freaks out and just has these horrible outbursts, and he curses at people, and he just cannot be questioned because it's so illogical that to question it would be to just unravel the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't make any sense.
Completely destroy it.
Yeah, and I just really liked that it brought that into it. That it would just be like all this culty, stuff, and then all of a sudden they would just interject a person who would question it, and then he would freak out, and then it would like never show that person again. Like they're just questioning is not going to be part of this fucking discussion. Yeah. Like it's just you either agree with him or you don't.
You get indoctrinated or you leave.
And they called it processing, to like go through and he asked these questions. But like through the whole thing, at no point did he ask the person to talk about their life. Like he's never like, hey, how did you grow up? What happened here? What was school like? Blah blah blah. It's all just like weird, random questions that elicit shitty emotions, and then they just like don't fix anybody. It's really weird, but it's really well acted. It's a weird movie though. It got really boring after about 2 hours.
I love that kind of stuff. I'm not a religious person at all, but I love religion and how interesting it is, and I like my wife is like a Christian Baptist, and she's not like hardcore crazy into it, but I mean she has her faith, and I've had a lot of interesting conversations with her about that.
Yeah, that's
interesting. I was raised in a household that had nothing. Like we weren't. I guess we're not atheists. They just didn't talk about anything at all. So
they were had no opinions about
life. My mom just
no
never
philosophy
cared really to discuss it.
Yeah.
So
this is what I did an analysis. Look at this. It's 2 pages of my analysis of that movie. I'm gonna try to start doing that with things I watch, because I'd like to do some reviews on different things.
Reviewing is always fun.
Yeah. I'd like to do more reviews, but we could do reviews here like we've been doing. I think it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's fun to chat about
stuff.
them, especially if something we've both seen and can discuss.
Sure. Yeah. So your wife is a Baptist, so
Christian Baptist,
that's like the
Southern Oklahoma.
Speaking in tongues, right? Don't they speak in tongues?
That's evangelical.
Evangelical.
You're
okay, I'm thinking
that's
evangelical.
The extreme side
Baptist
of it. No,
is
she's
not like that.
No.
Okay.
She but her whole family is very religious and traditional, and so this is interesting. It was like a culture like shock almost to me when I met her, and then like met her family, because it was the opposite of my family. My mom was always very open about everything with me. She didn't push any religious beliefs on me, and
that's good.
But her family, it was just, I mean, they're not like overbearing or anything, but I mean, it was just weird to be in a family that had like these traditions and these values and these beliefs, and so then I started talking to her a lot about it, and then I started studying religion a lot, and probably, I guess, as like a path to discovering something about myself. I don't know. So I don't know. It's always been interesting to me, and a lot of my writing, I always have religious themes in it.
Sure.
And it's always has two sides: people who believe it and people who don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like typically the main character usually isn't a believer, and then
because that's you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. Like writing
Yeah.
typically tends to be autobiographical, and so like religion is always has some theme or part of like almost every one of my stories. So
And because religion underlies a lot of people's decision making, even if it's fictional, it still resembles a religion. It still seems like it has religious aspects, like traditions and adherence to rules and authority and whatever else.
Yeah.
Rules. I think religion is a lot to do with moral evaluations and things like that.
I mean, I've always been envious, actually, that of her, in that I always think that it must be nice to just have faith in something so strongly that it makes you feel at ease with your life.
Ooh,
and like, I mean,
I find that scary.
Well, I mean, if you've just lived a good life,
yeah,
and you're dying, like, I feel like if you're really religious and you really believe that, you're just okay with it. You're like, because you believe you're gonna go to a better place, or whatever. And so I've just always thought it would be nice to believe that somebody's looking over me and that there's a good thing waiting for me at the end. But I just can't. Like, I think it's because I'm such a logical person at the same time. Like, I'm empathetic. Like, I understand why you'd want to believe those things.
Yeah.
But it's like, I just need some kind of proof. Like, I mean, if God fucking beamed down and was like, dude, I'm real.
Yeah.
Start believing if you want good things. I'd be like,
yeah,
I'm on board, sir.
Right,
like,
sure.
For sure.
But then he wouldn't really be a god.
Yeah.
He'd be a dude with a spaceship.
Yeah.
Right?
She would just be an alien, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
yeah.
So I think it's interesting, and I think it's cool in that it typically, I feel like it's a good moral foundation for children. Like, if it can teach you to be a good person and respect others and just be helpful. I mean, there's obviously.
Do you think they're pretty successful in that?
I feel like some are. Definitely not all of them. But I mean, nothing really has 100% success when it comes to things like that. But
no, but yeah, that would be an impossible.
But yeah, I mean, like in my wife's case, I feel like that molded her into a better person.
Yeah.
She's very nice. She always is helpful to people. I think it's just there's good religion in that respect that helps people become a better person, and then you have like the evangelical, like, you guys are
crazy people
being ridiculous right now, like, or people that really push their religion on you, like. I just don't talk about it. If like you're starting to talk about religion and somebody's like, can we just not talk about this? Then people should just let it go. But then there's like hardcore religious people, I feel like, are the ones that then they really are like, no, you got to believe.
Part of Christianity is the belief that if people don't adhere to it, that they're going to hell, and that it's your job to help this, the ignorant find their way to God, or Jesus or whatever. So it's like, I understand why people don't let it go. Like why my dad will never just accept the fact that I'm not a Christian. He'll never allow that because he says he loves me. I think he's crazy, but he says he loves me, so therefore it's his job to convince me to do what's right and go to heaven, right? So it's like a turmoil in his head that I'm not interested in doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very hard for some people to get over it and live and let other people live the way that they want. But I think it's an interesting. There's a lot of arguments for Christianity, and one of them is it's even if it's not real, right? Even if there's no God, the Bible was written by people, and there's lots of Bibles and contradictions and all this stuff, that it still has a function. It's still if it can create a moral rule set that people adhere to, and that is beneficial, then that's good, even though what they believe is fundamentally illogical. Yeah. Right. So if the consequence of the belief is something good, then it's okay that it comes from a place of
isn't it
irrationality.
I mean, you've read the Bible, right? Or part of it?
I've probably read the whole Bible.
The whole thing. But isn't it written almost in a form of like moral tales? Like typically, in a way?
That's somewhat automatic because all stories are moral.
Yeah, but I mean, it's almost like written like a guideline. Like
not really. No.
Oh, really?
No.
Like I said, I haven't read it, but
essentially, it's written by like tons of different people and was translated a lot of times from a lot of sources. So the Bible is a compilation of written things that were translated and changed and input and added and subtracted all throughout history. Mm-hmm. So the Bible is not by any means an accurate representation of any particular work of art.
Well, yeah, every time it's translated, people are gonna, they're gonna change things around a little bit, and
and you're talking about
add their own stuff.
Parts of the Bible are also written in different languages, so you have a lot of it's written in Hebrew, a lot of it's written in Aramaic and stuff like that too. Mm-hmm. So then you have the translation of those languages into Roman, right, which would probably been one of the first languages it was translated into, and then from that to English, and then so. Ultimately, what you're getting is just bastardized stories, and they're just stories. They're just stories that have characters.
Yeah.
And one of the characters is God, and one of the characters is Jesus in the New Testament. So you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament doesn't have Jesus. He didn't exist. So I don't know. I guess so. Before the New Testament, when Jesus existed, the only way to get to God was I think that there was a certain level of you had to sacrifice something like a child or a goat, or you had to sacrifice like parts of your body. Like there was human sacrifice is a huge part of all religions going back, right? And then they get changed into like, well, we don't want to kill our kids, so we'll kill a goat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God will like that. So that was a lot of the Old Testament was a lot of this redemption through tragedy, right? And then Jesus came along and it was nice because now all you had to do was believe that Jesus killed himself for everyone. So that was the human sacrifice that made it so everyone didn't have to create human sacrifice.
So it seems like they started off with some pretty extreme sacrificing, and then they just kind of eased off.
And then obviously because time and culture changed, everyone, there was a lot of influences, and I'm sure people were like, well, I can't adhere to a religion that wants me to kill things that I need, so why don't we come up with a way to have that taken care of through like the sins of man can be redeemed by God through his son, right? So he creates this son, out of thin air, and then kills him through the Romans who killed him. And then all of a sudden, all you have to do is be like, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful! Thank you, God. You had somebody do this for me. It's so nice." But that's just one story. But the Bible's crazy. The Bible is just a ton of non-scientific stories that were passed down, mostly oral, and then translated and then compiled into something. And then parts of the Bible are supposedly the Word of God through someone's interpretation, right? Like he spoke to someone.
Then you
and
have like
somebody
the
wrote
King
down.
Henry VII version, so he can have more wives.
No, it was King James.
Oh,
King
King
James.
James?
Yeah, the King James version is the one that we use. But actually, Constantine. In Rome, when he became became the emperor, actually took over the religion of the masses, right? The religion of the majority of like farmers and merchants and things like that. They had Christianity, right, which was geared toward the poor people with Jesus. And then what happened is Constantine, as a matter of unifying the country, took over Christianity and made it the national religion. And then what he did was took things in and out of the Bible that he didn't like. So then what he had was his version of what everyone should be reading, and then that ends up being they took out a bunch of books and things, and I don't even know how this happened.
Could you imagine how powerful you would be as an individual to have control over that? That's like frightening.
Oh yeah, and then he uses
people believe it
to justify, now we're the people of God that we read about, and now we can go kill all these people over here and do it with a purpose and a goal of converting them to our way of life.
Yeah.
And then everyone can talk about and be a part of this same religion thing, and it's obviously very powerful. And I think that's why the state, the government, and religion are essentially the same. They're the same, two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
So you have, all it is about human manipulation. It's that's what morality is, though, right?
Yeah.
Because morality is the implications of our actions and then the way that you justify them is either through a higher authority or through practical interactions or through the consequences, or right, because there's different moral philosophies like consequentialism, like God, like gods. People like in India have tons of gods.
Yeah.
And then you have secular morality, which doesn't base itself in gods and illogical things, and tries to base it in reality as far as what people do with each other and what makes sense and what's good and what's bad and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all a way to, morality is the most powerful way to manipulate behavior. So if your morality structure involves adherence to an authority, like in religion or like in the state or in the government, then you can get people to give you money. You can get people to fight for you. You can get people because it's good to do those things, because it's moral to do those things.
Yeah.
And that's what is very important for people to understand, is that they're not doing it because it's actually good for them or because it's good for humanity or it's good for the world or even the earth, but it's good for who is spouting the morality, who is saying, I'm good, listen to me, right? So a secular morality has to do with universal morality that everyone has to adhere to regardless of their position in society or their ability to create power and all that stuff. So it's confusing, or it's complicated, I guess.
No, it is. Like, that's...
But religion is so old and so ancient that it's been spread, and it's very powerful, and it creates obligations and moral obligations, and then it creates justifications for murder, for people, like not using condoms, or not eating shellfish, or things that are illogical or ancient. Like why would we adhere to a 3,000-year-old religion
when the world is completely
so different, and it's not successful. It's not creating more good in the earth. It's not. I mean, there are some good tenets in it, but why don't we take the good stuff, like don't murder your neighbor or whatever tenet, you principle. You could distill it down to like 4 or 5 really important principles, and then get rid of the bullshit about a guy who had all of his hair. He had long hair, and when it got cut off, he had no more power. It's fucking illogical and stupid.
That's a story?
That's a story in the Bible.
Wow.
I think his name's Samson, and he had this long, flowing, beautiful blonde hair, and he was big and buff. He was essentially Arnold Schwarzenegger with blonde hair. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger already has blonde hair. And he was the biggest warrior, right? And then all of a sudden, he's sleeping, and this woman, like his mistress or something, comes in and cuts all his hair off because she's an evil lady. And then he has no power. That's a story in the Bible. Yeah. Makes no sense. It's fucking illogical. And people are teaching their children that this really happened in history. Like, they're not saying, oh, it's just a metaphor for the way that, like, women can take power away from men. Even if they're really strong and big, if a woman just comes in, she can easily take that power away from him through her treachery or through her lies or deceit or through her cutting his hair. Somehow that has a physical effect. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. It's a metaphor. It's all just stories. It's just like if somebody took all the movies that have come out in the 90s, they put them all into a compilation where they took the main little, like, important scenes, and then they just compiled them together and then said, well, that's how we're going to live our life. And then you're just like, but this is all just a bunch of fucking mishmash stories that contradict each other, because in one thing, like, the guy's good for being violent, and then in another thing, the guy's bad for being violent, and this guy's good and this guy's bad, but they do the same thing, so it doesn't make any sense.
I feel like it ends up leading to, like, a lot of confusion for children, because
if you understand it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you grow up with these stories to teach you morality, essentially, right?
Right.
And but then, like, when you develop your own thought processes and become an individual,
you start to question
and you really start to question it, then I feel like it leads to, like, an existential crisis, because
of course
everything that you've been led to believe is essentially a lie, or it was you were misinformed, or you didn't understand the story, but now you're starting to get it.
Sure.
And so it's just, I don't know, it's such a tricky.
The problem is that
road.
the consequences of challenging it are that now you don't get along with your family, you might get hurt by your family, and you might have to leave your family.
Yeah.
Or your whole social network. So I think it survives because of its ostracism, right? If you are a Catholic and then you do something against the Catholic Church, now you don't get to be a Catholic, you don't get any of your friends, and they're all told you have to shun this person. They are against God, which is really just saying they're not adhering to what we need because now they're not going to give us money or support, and we can't have that in our society, because if everyone questions and everyone starts to have these like real open, honest conversations about what they're actually fucking doing in this like situation, then it would degrade because it's all based on irrational adhering to something that doesn't make any sense typically. I mean, you don't need to get a bunch of atheists together and to get a bunch of money for them all to just go, yeah, we don't believe in God. They don't need to sit around and talk about it because they've already worked it out logically, and it's the conclusion of the logic, not the other way around. They didn't go, oh, there's no God, let's come up with ways to explain that. Yeah. It's just, let's start at the bottom and go, okay, so, God represents this set of attributes which involve illogical premises. And let's just, okay, so that's illogical, that's illogical, that's illogical. No reason to believe in it. Yeah. That's essentially where that comes from. There's other reasons to not believe in God, I'm sure, or to believe in other gods, or, why does somebody believe in one God? Why does somebody believe everyone's an agnostic or an atheist about all the gods and things they don't believe in? Yeah, it's right. True. A Christian doesn't go, well, I believe in Vishnu and Buddha, and I believe in Thor, but really my God's like the best one. They don't do that. They go, I don't believe in any of that bullshit, but my God's right. Yeah. But an atheist is just like, no, there's no reason to believe in any of that shit because your God, this God, it's all just illogical. Yeah. So it's a funny thing, and it's obvious that it's only because you were born into it. It's not truth.
It's all upbringing.
It's not an objective truth like science or math or something that you learn based on logic and principles and then the evidence of reality that matches it. It's you were born, they told you this was right, and if you go against it, then you don't get to be a good kid. Yeah. You're not a good kid. You're bad, you're disrespectful, you're willful, you're ungodly, all these different things. So yeah, but I grew up in a very strict Christian household, and so my whole life I've been trying to come up with rebuts for those arguments. Yeah, I've been studying religion and philosophy because I was so bombarded by these things that I really wanted to learn how to understand them. And in that you end up, watching debates and arguments and learning, logic about why and how.
I think it's like really tough if you are a logical person and you are trying to find the logic in it, because it's really not. It's faith, which is a totally different ball game. You just have to blindly believe that these things are because you were told they were. And then if you really, like you said, if you question it and you try to apply logic to it, there's not really logical answers to it. Yeah. And so then you're just like, well, what?
Then you become pariah to those people. Yeah. And instead of having an open, honest conversation about the inconsistencies of all of it, it becomes like a fight for their life, because it's their soul, it's their life. If you believe in a soul that gets to go to heaven or not to heaven based on whether or not this person tells me that it's right or wrong, then they're going to fight to the death. That they're just going to they can't not. They have to fight me, because if I'm right and they're wrong, ultimately they aren't going to hell. So I don't know what they're so worried about all the consequences of that. Like, and I think it's mostly social. It's got to be that if it was beat into them and it was forced on them for so many years that to deny it is to deny all of their social and their reality and everything for the most part, which is obviously really scary. To me, I wasn't very old when I started to be like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I prayed until I was probably like 12, 13, 14, maybe a little bit, like maybe one time after that when I was like 16, because I was so scared.
Just in case you
are
there.
It was literally this
covering my own ass.
This is the dumbest thing I could do right now, but I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to pray, and I know it's not real, but I have to do something. So But yeah, I haven't done that in a long time, and it's weird though because you still get scared and you still believe irrational things sometimes. Like every once in a while I'm like, there's probably a ghost up in this house, but I don't believe in ghosts. It doesn't make sense, but there's a visceral emotional response to fear that you create an irrational explanation for.
Definitely do.
Because you don't know the actual explanation, so it's you still get freaked out and stuff like that. But
yeah, no, I just don't have any beliefs, so I'm not going to be ignorant enough to rule everything out. So I just kind of stand in the middle ground and write it out. And
sure, well, and you probably haven't tried one way or the other to take a stand, to be like, well, blah blah blah, and not everybody has to, but you're not going around telling people what to do, so you don't have to justify it. You don't.
That's how I view it. I mean, if you want to believe the things you believe, then go right ahead. Just don't force it on other people.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to have to listen to you if what you're spewing is nonsense to them. So
sure.
But yeah, no, I'm lucky that with my wife and her family, we just don't really talk about it. I think that they know that I wasn't a religious household. I'm not religious, so we just don't talk about it. Like, that's just the best way.
And
to
they
handle
also
it.
know you're not an idiot, because if you were kind of seeking some more explanations in your life, or you were they call it lost. I don't know what that means, but if you were weak, minded, then they would easily convince you. They would they would poke at you until they could get you. I'm not saying that's like they're being evil. That's a different discussion. To willfully engage in illogical things with impressionable people, I think it is evil. It might be a kind of like they aren't trying to be evil, right? Like Hitler didn't think he was evil.
Yeah, you never do.
But he is evil.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with evil, is that it's usually ignorant to its own evil. And then if you know right and wrong and you still do it, then you're even more fucking evil, right? Like there's like two levels of evil there.
We had to write a paper for that actually one time, where the question was, does evil really exist?
Yeah.
And I remember trying to think outside of the box for it, and I was like, I don't know, because we
can't assume it.
Evil is all defined by your point of view. Like, if you're part of a cannibalistic tribe and you're fucking eat people, like, we would view that as pretty evil because our society doesn't
depends on your explanation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are things that people did that were like Hitler, for example. I feel like it was just generally considered he was an evil guy. He exterminated tons of people for no reason, really, other than what he believed.
Well, he had some very strong reasons.
That's what I mean.
The problem is that those are invalid. They're not.
Exactly.
They're not
it's
right.
Like, was he evil? Because in his mind he wasn't evil, but we perceived him as an evil being. And so I just remember like writing this whole paper about that, and then the teacher just disagreed with me. He was just like, "No, evil exists," and I was just like,
"Why are they asking you?"
Then, I was like, "Well, then what's the point of me answering the question if you're just going to be like, no, it exists?"
Well, that's not how you debut argument.
Yeah.
I'm making an argument that says that morality is relative to the perspective of the individual. It's subjective. It's right or wrong based on that person's perspective. Now, from other people's perspectives, it's seen as evil because their perspective is different. But the way to rebut it is to say, no, morality has a basis that is not subjective. So there's a reality, regardless of the perspective, that this is evil because of the actions and the effects of it, right? And then that would be rebutting your argument. But to just say, no, you're wrong is not an argument.
Yeah, it was just a weird conversation.
Okay, thanks.
I was just like, well, elaborate. Like,
yeah. That's like, I love how in high school or even in college, they give you questions like that without any basis to start from. Like, why don't we start with a little less complicated? Like, I mean, philosophy has been going for thousands of years, and they haven't come to a consensus on what the fuck evil is, right? There's still debates about all of it, right? So if they're still being debated, what makes you think a kid who's never studied philosophy is going to be able to answer the is evil real question that with no basis in the different arguments? So why not ask a question that's a little more interesting or a little more practical, a little more useful in their daily life, like is abortion moral or something like that? Something that actually you could make some arguments this way and that about.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you bring up abortion, because I had to do a.
You had one. You had an abortion last week.
Personally.
Yeah.
No, we had to do a mine wasn't about abortion, but we had to do like a an argumentative speech or whatever, where we had to like have points to validate our reasoning behind things. And I didn't do mine on abortion. I actually did it on Oregon's assisted suicide law.
Cool.
And how I thought that I thought it was a good thing. Like, it's your life. If you want to have, I mean, if the doctor is okay with helping you end your life that is your own,
sure,
then what's wrong with that?
You own
like, as long
your
as
own
they're
body.
comfortable doing it, and you I mean, if you have fucking cancer and you can't get out of bed and your life is terrible, and you just want to let it go and just be done with it, like, what's wrong with that? Like, you're not hurting anybody. Like, as long as the doctor's okay with it. He's really the only one that might fucking feel guilty about it, like, later that night.
But that would be
can't
up to
sleep.
them.
That's what I mean. But obviously, if they're just like, if they think that they're doing the right thing and they're okay with it, then and they're not going to lose sleep over it, then you're not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
So I just remember like doing this whole speech about
Yeah.
why, and then the class actually got to kind of argue with you a little bit if they had, and I remember people being like, yeah, but suicide's wrong. And it was because I was in a small town where religion's a pretty big thing.
Well,
and then
still,
like,
even in a big town, you're going to get people who still have a major issue with suicide or anything like that. I think that it depends on your basis of what's the principle behind it. Is it that we own our bodies and that we get to make decisions related to them? Then you can't. Suicide's totally justified. Who cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't. It's my body.
Well, there's
I get to do it.
damage, I guess, to your family. But I mean, physically,
but that's not necessarily true either.
Yeah.
If I can explain to my family that this is the right thing to do, that I'm the one who's going to do it, then and they would be happy because I'm suffering and I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Then why not? And doctor assisted there's a moral issue there. Only you would have to make sure two things were possible: that you could tell that the person who wanted to die was of sound. They were rationally able to make that decision.
Too far gone.
And then the other thing is it ever moral for a person to help another person commit suicide when that person should be the only person that gets to initiate the death of themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they change their mind, they don't have any recourse if the person does it for them.
Yeah.
Right. So let's say I'm the one who wants to kill myself, but I don't have the means to do it. What happens if I change my mind and you already come in and kill me? But I guess it doesn't matter because I made a decision. And I get to make decisions about myself. So that's why I'm saying it's curious, but ultimately suicide is fine to me. I don't have a there's no moral problem there. There's obviously other issues like why are they fucking so like what why do they feel like there's no other alternative?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You know, so there's some.
Well, I mean, I feel like in the case of the organ-assisted one, it's typically for the terminally ill. It's not
and it is
somebody who had a fucking bad day and they're just like, oh, I don't want to be on the earth anymore. Kill me.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's obviously
suck it up,
interesting
and
issue.
Deal with it.
But that's also another really uncommon issue. That's not practical. I'm not going to end up. I mean, what are the odds of me being in the situation where that comes up? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty fucking low. I'm pretty sure it's pretty low. Yeah, like that's the whole thing with Ebola is everyone's worried about it, but it kills like a few thousand people a year in other countries, right? And now maybe it'll come to America, but the flu kills like 300,000 people a year.
Yeah.
The fucking flu. So I'm pretty sure we can like not worry about Ebola, which is like a somewhat hard to, contract disease that kills you within a few weeks. Like if you get it, you're going to die. Let's work on making sure nobody gets it. Let's try to come up with a cure because why not? It's pretty horrible.
I thought that I'm pretty sure they have like treatments and stuff.
I would imagine, but I think you have to get to it really quick.
Yeah.
Obviously, the richer you are, the better you're probably off if you get it.
In life in general, the
obviously.
More money you have, the better your life's probably going to be.
I think the flu kills women, or not women.
Only women. It's very gender specific.
Yeah, it's weird.
Sickness.
It's like HPV, but or cervical cancer. Like dudes don't get that.
What if you're a dude who has a cervix?
Then you could get it.
Is that a hermaphrodite, right?
Yeah, probably actually. What the fuck? What's happening? What are you saying?
I don't know.
What are you talking about? No, but yeah, obviously, people are crazy anyway. But what the fuck were we talking about before
I don't know.
Ebola?
Like I said, these things keep going like way off rails.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I'm
We're at
liking
about
it.
2 hours right now, so we could go for a little while longer. I think 3 hours is about the most I would probably want to do.
Oh, okay.
just personally, and that's all I can fit on my fucking SD card. I gotta get a bigger SD card. But yeah, religion is funky. I'm not a fan, obviously. But,
yeah, I said, I like it in the sense of if it's gonna make you a better person,
right?
So I mean, if you like it personally and you enjoy the things that it teaches you, and you're not gonna shove it on other people, then I'm all for it. Like, I'm not against religion. I'm not gonna hop on the evangelical train and start fucking speaking in tongues and freaking people out. But I don't know. It's nice. Like I said, luckily my wife's not like crazy into it. She doesn't.
Sure, and she seems pretty rational and she's pretty hard worker.
Yeah,
but
she has a very good balance of a logical sensibility.
Yeah,
but then just has those underlying faiths that she grew up with, and so I feel like makes better moral choices because of it.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's interesting. I think the moral argument is kind of if it's a strong, useful, practical moral principle, it doesn't matter where it comes from necessarily.
You don't need religion to teach you how to be a good person. And
but if its basis is on the fear of a vengeful God, then it's based on adherence to illogical consequences as opposed to the principle itself. Like if you say, okay, if the principle is murder is evil, right? You don't get to murder people, and we define murder as, the willful killing of another person who not in a self-defense situation, right? Yeah. It's not murder if it's self-defense. So murder is illegal, or it is illegal, but I meant immoral.
I mean, it really is.
It also is immoral.
It's a little bit of both.
Murder is usually illegal, unless you're in the military, a cop, or a really rich person, and then you can get away with it. But anyway, so if you say that is a principle, now if you just go, that's a principle, murder is evil, and we can say that. But then if you say the only reason that murder is evil is because God said so, then all you have to do is say, well, I don't believe in God, and therefore murder is not evil.
Yeah,
so you throw that out the window.
Yeah.
But if you say murder is evil because the principle of, because it's not universally, you can't re-universalize that principle. You can't universalize the opposite, right? Which would be murder is not evil, or murder is okay, or everyone can murder, right? If you could say that, then the phrase murder is evil wouldn't be true, right? If you could validate that murder is okay. But in order to validate that murder is okay, you would have to be able to say that you, like, if we're sitting in a room and I murder you, if that's okay, then it has to be okay to you too.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's universal. It has to be every situation is
okay. You can just kill me, guys.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
Right, I'm okay
but
with
if you say it's okay to kill me, is that murder?
I don't know.
Right? Because murder is almost defined by the fact that you don't want me to fucking do it.
I feel like if I knew you were really going to murder, like 110% sure you were going to murder me, then I'm almost committing suicide at that point, right?
Only
I don't defend myself.
Right. If you're saying I'm okay with you murdering me, it's not murder, it's that doctor-assisted suicide shit.
Yeah,
It's really suicide, right? It really is, because ultimately suicide is just the ability to determine whether you live or not, right? It doesn't really necessarily say who kills you. So it can't...
it's like putting yourself in a situation where you're going to die.
Right. It's like if I know that if I stand on a railroad track I'm going to die, and I stand on the railroad track, and it's not the train's fault that I'm dead, it's me, I killed myself. So it's the same thing. If you know I'm going to kill you, I go, hey, you mind if I kill you? And you go, yeah, no, that's fine, I don't mind, kill me. Then it's not murder. Right? So then you could never be in a situation where murder is okay.
Yeah.
Because murder by definition is not okay. So then it destroys itself logically. And so then you would have to say, okay, well then the phrase murder is evil is necessarily true because the one party doesn't want it, and it can't be universalized the other way, but it can be universalized with it being evil, right? If you're like, I don't want to be murdered, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be murdered, then I guess we won't murder each other. We can both do that and not be illogical. It's not an illogical. There's no contradictions. And this is the same with theft, because if theft is okay, if theft is moral, it's moral to be a thief, then it has to be moral for everyone. And therefore, if you if you say, I don't mind if you steal my stuff, it's not stealing.
No, you're just borrowing.
I'm
it.
fucking.
Maybe you're not going to give it
You're
back,
giving it to
but
me,
yeah,
or I'm
yeah.
giving it to you. So that it's illogical to say that thievery is moral. One person has to necessarily not want to be thieved against, robbed.
You should write a story where the whole world is morally okay with these things, but one fucking guy, just one guy.
You mean one guy is not okay with everyone robbing him? Yeah, so he has to sit in a chair with a shotgun all day.
He's just like holed up.
He's like,
inside
why
his
does everyone
house
not care if people are taking all their stuff? But it wouldn't be. That's what I mean. It's just it's a weird illogical situation. But that's why you can say something like theft is immoral without saying God is involved. Theft is immoral not because God says it's immoral, but because we can't do it logically.
Yeah.
We can't say theft is moral logically. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. It's not universal. It doesn't. It's not what people want. It's obviously not what people want at all. I mean, nobody wants their stuff taken, or else they would just leave their doors unlocked and put their stuff out on the yard and say, take my stuff. And then it wouldn't be theft, so it's illogical. So that's what I was saying is that you don't need religion to have morality. You don't need to say the consequence is going to hell for someone to say, I don't want to do something.
Yeah.
It's just that's what a lot of people use as justification for their religious notions.
It's like context, and I feel like fear is... It's just good at making people do what you want them to do. Like, if they're afraid, they're obviously going to have more incentive to do those or not do those
things. It's one way, right? Yeah. It's one option. But I think it's the way that we've been doing it for so long that we kind of accept fear, which is why violence is something that's accepted, right? In childhood all the way up through military and all that stuff, is because we think that fear is a good way to get people to do things. So that's why people yell at people. That's why they put them in prison. That's why they do all these things. But I think that you actually get way more out of people if they're not afraid.
Yeah.
You actually get way more productivity if people are willing and happy to do what they want.
Yeah.
So that's why
definitely.
Freedom from all of this violent tyranny is the ultimate goal of anarchists who are not that kind of I don't like rules anarchy. Like the actual anarchy is not no rules, it's no rulers, right? So that's like, I mean, we could go into that forever, but ultimately I like that concept. I like the idea that we don't have to do things because somebody says if you don't do it, you're bad, or if you don't do it, you're going to go to jail, or the leader says no. It's just you don't do it because you have a strong moral principle that just makes sense logically and is what most people prefer. And, you don't have to base it on this traditional religious, God-fearing, violent-ridden, tradition of what we've been doing for thousands of years. I think we can get to the point where people don't need that. They reject it because of its, because people do so much better without tyranny, without fear, without, if a person's in a fairly unregulated business that's controlled by whether or not their customers are interested, they're going to do whatever they can to make their customers happy. There's no fear, there's no violence, there's no if you don't do this we're gonna come and raid your house. It's just I'm doing what I think makes sense, and I'm trying to satisfy these other people over here, and I want to do what is good and healthy and all that stuff. And I don't think you need all powerful Sauron eye, scaring the shit out of kids when they're little to do it, but it takes experimentation. Obviously we have to find that out, and people have to try it.
Break those traditional things as well. So I mean, if that's how your grandparents raised your mom, and that's how your mom's probably gonna raise you, because that's how she was raised and that's what she knows,
right?
I feel like religion, though, in general, is just kind of thinning out, I guess, and I feel like maybe it's because people have access to so many more forms of
Information.
It's gotta be. Like you have the internet now. There's just all these things that you can research. Whereas back in the day, you lived in like a small town or something. You were just the only source of information you had is what you were told, and the few books that you had, I guess, at your disposal. But now it's so information's freely everywhere now. And so I just feel like more and more I don't really come across people that are like deeply religious. or they like kind of are.
Well, it's hard because everyone hides it except for when
Yeah.
they're comfortable being crazy. You know, like you're not going to go to the store, and and then you see those people who come like who just randomly stop you in public, and they're like, "Hey, do you know about Jesus?" And you're just like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like,
Yeah,
even if I
yeah.
was into it. I don't. You are crazy. Like you're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
being way out of your element here, and that doesn't make any sense. So, I think people, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily believe it. I think a lot of people they just have to be in that religion.
It's like
they have
need
to be
a clique and a group to be associated.
because we can't live by ourselves, and we don't.
Yeah,
we
social
fear solitaire.
needs.
You know, we fear the game solitaire because it's so lonely.
It's addicting.
It's like one of the only games that you
I've
can do by
lost
like
so
you
much
just
money.
have to do by yourself. Like you
Yeah.
can't even play solitaire with another person. That's
I
probably why it's
remember-
called solitaire, right?
Yeah,
Solitary, but it's AIRE, not ARE, like solitary.
Yeah,
Confinement
know.
or whatever.
That's another thing I guess we can research
What a
for
weird,
next time.
What a
we
weird
can,
game.
We can discuss solitaire at length.
Yeah.
and its origins.
I'll look it up. It's probably a pretty ancient game.
Yeah, I just think of cowboys who are like half
Really?
drunk trying to play it for some reason. I don't
That's
know.
weird.
Or sitting at your computer.
I think of
'cause that's
old
like
ladies.
Everybody just fucking played solitaire on their computer.
Yeah.
It's like that free game that's on every.
Yeah, it's kind of weird
computer,
how
like-
solitary. It could be just it's a hypnotizing game. Like it's a game that just hypnotizes people into like believing communism or something.
Yeah.
And it just is a remnant of the Cold War, and we don't know it.
And
Microsoft is into it?
Man, she used to just sit at her computer for
Yeah.
hours playing.
Oh, they
that
love
shit,
that game.
And I'm just like, I would play it like once. I'm like, this is
I think it's
fucking boring.
it's one of the most mind-numbing games because it's not hard.
Yeah,
It's
you're just
you
mashing cards
actually
and
don't
shit.
really make a lot of decisions because you have so many rules. It has to be black on red in order. So if you have the right card, it's either you fucking saw it correctly and you put it in the right spot or you didn't. There's not a lot of options. It's not like you can just. It's not like chess where every piece has like infinite. Every
Man,
game
I love
has.
chess. Chess
I've been
is so
I've
much
been
fun.
trying to get back into it. Because pool is very similar to chess in that it's very strategic. You have positions on the board and things can get in each other's way and you have to plan things out ahead of time. I realized that I'm not really good at that. I'm not really good at planning 5-6 steps ahead.
Yeah, I'm not either.
It's hard.
I just enjoy it for what I enjoy the level of strategy in it.
Yeah.
I like every game can end up completely different. I mean, it's I don't know. It's really cool. I've always enjoyed chess.
Yeah. I think it's
There's
it's
no
a
chance in it. It's just all skill.
Oh, yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of board games, for example. There's always an element of luck if you're rolling dice and stuff.
Sure.
And it's just one of those board games that it's literally like every move is your decision,
Sure.
and if you lose, it's because you were bested by somebody who's
thinking better.
made better moves than you did.
Sure.
So
It's fucking crazy.
yeah,
I downloaded it onto my phone so I could play it instead of playing solitaire actually whenever I can, and I've been trying to use it as a tool to think steps ahead to teach my brain to do that more with pool. Because I played I've been playing the like on the easiest chess mode, right? And I'll just do all this stuff, take out a ton of the other team, and
They're
then
bad
it
guys.
still is a stalemate
moving it.
because I can't think of how to get their fucking king into a position where they can't move.
yeah.
They can always move around because it was just like I had killed all their players except for like one pawn and the king. But because I didn't have enough resources, it just kept moving, and it was like, you have reached a stalemate, and I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. Can I keep trying? Like, I don't even know. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere either. But
Maybe it must
the
have
game
like
knows.
a certain amount of moves that you have to finish it by or something. Because typically you just
It does.
go until
Well, it has a certain number of. It keeps track of how much is not when something's not happening. So when no one's progressing toward the end goal of getting a checkmate.
I mean, I
When
guess that makes sense. So that
there's
if
enough moves where
if
nothing
your
happened.
set gets obliterated and you can still outsmart them with just your king, you have a chance of like kind of.
Yeah,
Not, I guess.
Well, it's not that
at
you
that
won; it's that
point-
they didn't win.
Well, at
So
that point, it's like a victory for you. If they have a bunch
Kinda,
of
yeah.
pieces and you just have like 2, and you kept them
Yeah.
from getting you.
Well, you're
like,
thinking
that's like a victory for
Yeah.
you.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
that's
not
chess.
officially, but in your mind, you're like,
Well,
bitch.
Yeah, obviously the other person is not able to take you out with more resources, so you're smarter than them.
Yeah.
It's a definite, it's
You're just not good at resource management yourself.
No. Yeah, that's what the game is for sure. It's just the resources represent, like what a real wartime situation would be like, but it's somewhat violent in its symbolism, I guess.
It's a lot of death.
Yeah, that fucking those horses.
I've always appreciated the
castles somehow die. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an organism
and they move
and a thing. And
it doesn't make any sense.
I just like that the shitty pieces, essentially, the front row soldiers are just pawns. So it's just like it's obviously.
Yeah, it wasn't developed by a pawn.
Yeah, no, and I mean it's clearly meant as like a war type game.
Oh yeah,
but they just refer to the infantry as pawns.
Sure.
So I'm sure that made soldiers all over the world feel really good about themselves.
Well, I bet they obviously,
or they just didn't think about
poor
it. Poor
people probably
pawns.
did not play that game like for
yeah,
a long time
true.
because of. I mean, you got to think about how you have to have spare time. You have to have somebody make it. You have to have the board. You probably couldn't just buy it. They weren't like fucking Spencer's, in the medieval times.
It's like dildo pawns.
yeah, dildo. You know what I just thought about is never mind. I'm not going to say that on the podcast. Never mind. It's about a chess set that involves paraphernalia that I think would be funny.
Oh god.
Essentially a whole chess set that's made of glass pipes in the you know what I mean? Because I watched this really good documentary about glass pipes on Netflix last night, and it's almost all about Eugene in Springfield. I didn't even know that going into it.
Oh man, Eugene is like the mecca for that kind of stuff.
The guy who literally started making glass pipes was in Eugene when he did it. He started in Eugene and still probably lives here, or he's dead or something. I don't know. It's a pretty recent.
Imagine if that's
Netflix.
your profession and you've been doing it for long enough, you're probably dead.
He was old.
Yeah.
I don't know. But and then it blew up, and then there was a whole legal issue. But I was just like, they can make anything. Those guys can make anything out of glass. It's the most interesting art. I was super impressed with what they can pull off.
Yeah.
We're talking like sculptures, like with all sorts of colors, and they're still usable pipes, which is interesting way to limit their craft, like has to be a pipe or some other implement.
So they didn't build any other they didn't just do glass sculptures. They were all pipe specific.
Right. The documentary was about glass pipes, not about glass.
I wonder if they would if they actually just did normal sculptures.
They can't. They showed some. Those people can do everything with glass. Yeah. It's amazing. So this one guy had like this a pirate ship made of all glass. And we're talking about intricate, like all of the like the webbing on the sails and like the little thing, the rope ladders that you would climb up, like that was all glass, like glass, everything. It was like this big, like 3x2 glass with all intricate colorations and things like that.
That's crazy.
Really awesome. Like I can't imagine how hard it would be. And a ton of times their shit just breaks. Like 2 days in, they're building this thing and it just breaks because fucking glass.
Oh man, you'd have to have an incredible level of patience and just
and passion. You have to just be like, fuck it,
you'd have to
doing
just be
it.
like, well, shit, I guess we'll just melt it down and start over.
But that's what they're dealing with. It's a craft. It's super hard. But I was really impressed with it. But I was thinking it would be really cool to get, even if it wasn't pipes. I always wanted a chess set that is unique, and to have one that's made of all glass, awesome colored or color changing or something like that. All glass pieces would be really cool. But I also want one that's like all Harry Potter characters, and I could probably buy that and shit too. So
I actually was looking to buy a chess set because my wife doesn't know how to play chess, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get a chess set to learn. It's a ton of fun. And I immediately just started looking at like Star Wars chess sets.
Yeah, dude, that'd be so cool.
I just want like a nerdy, awesome chess set. Just leave it set up on my coffee table all the time, which wouldn't work because then my dog would just steal the pieces probably and fucking eat them or something. But
my buddy Anthony is super good at chess. He's really good at any games, like Words with Friends. He beat me every time, and I'm like, I like words. I know how to spell words, and I know a lot of different words. He would beat me every fucking time at that game, at Scrabble type games. And he's really good at cribbage and like cards and chess. We've played chess before a lot, and I'm just really surprised at how good he is at those kind of games. He's obviously like a big, thinks ahead when it comes to those kind of games. And I have to really try hard if I'm going to beat him at chess. But I haven't played in a long time, so I'm trying to bone up on how to play chess and get better at it.
Bone up, is that?
That's the thing.
Is it?
Right.
All right,
it means that I've done pretty well at it before, but I'm trying to relearn what I've already learned.
Mm-hmm.
Bone up. I think that's what. Maybe that's it's like word up.
Word.
Bone up. Bone up, dog. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm in my mind. I'm like trying to figure out how to. No,
it's not a sexual thing.
I feel like bone immediately it has a sexual connotation anymore. But I wasn't. I was just thinking of how you would explain that expression.
I don't know. The picture I get is somebody like crawling on their elbows.
I picture somebody
to get somewhere. I don't know
drinking
why.
a tall glass of milk, and they're just like, I got to fucking strengthen my bones.
I got to bone up on my calcium intake. That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. That's a weird phrase. There's a lot of weird phrases like that don't make any fucking sense.
Every time I hear a phrase like that, my mind just starts going to
how did it come about?
How did it come about? Like,
no.
What do you mean exactly? I guess by that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I think sometimes those come up, and then somebody comes up with a phrase, or an explanation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes the explanation is not correct, but it's logical enough that we go with it.
Yeah.
Like, because I think the phrase might have been so old or so ambiguous, like it didn't really come from a physical, actual thing that happened. Like there was no person who like if you were to explain bone up, it wouldn't be like somebody. It represents a guy who worked in a meat market who dealt with a lot of bones, and he would take the bones out at night, and then some guy would take them and lift them up above his head, and that's where bone up comes. I don't think that's, but they come up with
it's
these
just like
explanations.
a work slang.
Yeah, it's
bone up,
and then it becomes a thing, and then it represents the metaphor becomes why we use it now is okay. Now we use it for this, but I think a lot of times people just come up with explanations that make sense based on rumors. It's just
or it just sounds.
It's just
cool,
bullshit, or it just
like
somebody, people make
awesome.
shit up.
Yeah.
Anybody who's a good writer can
or
just
liar.
bullshit their way.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, that imagination in the way that you would explain things, you could easily lie about how a phrase came about. I just don't trust people.
You shouldn't. People
don't. I don't trust anybody.
I wish I could trust people more.
That'd be weird.
I feel like I have to know a person for a long time, and then I'm finally like,
it takes me
you're probably
forever.
not going to kill me, so we can be friends.
Yeah. I feel like you haven't yelled at me in our relationship, so I could probably hang out with you some more. Trust is tough. I don't know.
There's some people who are just they just meet you, they're your best friend right away, and they're just buddy with you, and I'm just like,
I can't get
anything about me. Like, we got to take it slow.
Yeah,
I'm a dainty little lady. I need my time.
yeah. You need to woo me. I do not trust you. I have been spurned in the past. I've been spurred like a horse. Yeah, for sure. I think there's a certain level of agreeableness that people have that they grow into, and it's based on their experiences and their biology or whatever. Like, agreeableness is a personality type that you can measure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think agreeableness is why people believe irrational bullshit. I think they're just, no, you're right. Yeah, that's totally true. Oh, I believe it. And then they just are agreeable, and they don't disagree. They don't conflict. They don't want to cause conflicts. They don't want to question it. They don't want to think about it. It's just, I agree. I agree with you, and we can be buddies, and I just need you to be like me. I need you to like me.
Just like me
so that I can get along in life easier, right? It's a social mechanism, And then you have people who are disagreeable, and then but they tend to be the smarter people. The people who don't agree, who question authority, who question people's beliefs, those people, maybe they're not necessarily, uber smart, but they're at least attempting at, to figure out what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
And so
it's
to be
free thinking, to just to think for yourself instead of
not just accept it.
Hopping on the bandwagon and cruising with everybody.
I think being disagreeable is fucking hugely important, but it turns you against those people who don't appreciate it.
I feel like my agree and disagree level, it just varies. I think based on how important it is to me. Like, if somebody says something dumb and I don't care, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, we'll see you later. Like, whatever.
Right. You don't
like
have
people
to
at work and stuff. Who,
Yeah, you're just
like come in
"Ah."
and say dumb things. I'm just like, oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
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 It's literally me being like, I am just trying to grind through this conversation with you so that you'll leave. But yeah, I love to like debate with people, especially if it's something I know a lot about. If I don't know anything about it, I'm just gonna be like,
yeah,
you don't know, man. Like,
can't really.
I'm just gonna bullshit my way through this pretty much. So.
Yeah, I love debates. I love arguing, and I love that you can take someone's argument and just be like, that's not logical. That doesn't. You just said something crazy. You don't even realize it, but what you just said was fucking stupid. And you can point. You can be like, well, this doesn't really make sense with this. You know, it's like logic is real. Like logic makes sense. You know, based on how you use it and facts and real things. And it's weird, like that people just don't really understand that or whatever. It's.
You can learn a lot too.
And the problem with
debating with people,
the problem with it, if like you're really like, let's say you really like logic, you really like reason, you really like to argue and be right. People think that you're pompous or that you're a know-it-all, but really you're just a questioner. You're just a person who really, if you have a better argument and your logic makes sense, fucking awesome. Like I'm not against that. I'm just against the people who aren't right, you know, who say they're right based on crazy stuff, you know, like I'm not like purposefully disagreeing because I don't like you. I just, what you said doesn't make any fucking sense. And I'm pointing that out. I'm sorry. It's not my fault.
Where like a level of agreeableness comes in though too.
Yeah.
If you know the person's wrong, you're just afraid to confront them, or you don't want to seem like a know-it-all. You don't want to leave that kind of impression on somebody, and so you just kind of end up tagging along with it.
Well, yeah,
and
people who don't want their bullshit pointed out are going to make it difficult on the people who point it out.
They're gonna be total douche about it.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, well, they're gonna say things that are really personal or something like that, or you know, just wrong and or just say you're stupid or something stupid like that. What are you against? You against God? You against the truth?
This is the worst people. Like
sure.
I, especially if they just immediately attack you because you just had one out loud thought about something, and then you're on the defense.
People don't really listen very well either, so I don't think people are good at listening for the most part.
A lot of people probably
especially the people like we see every day. They are not listening. They're just talking, and we're just like I just stop talking to people after a while if they're just not listening to me. I'll just be like, okay, whatever you want to do. Here's your game. Go away. Bye bye. We're not having a conversation. So
how people don't realize that when the conversation's like over. Because I feel like I give people cues all the time as like when I'm just passively kind of agreeing with them just to move the conversation along.
Right, like, social cues. They don't get that you're not interested.
Yeah, how do you not pick up on somebody and then just be like, and then just kind of let the conversation die away and then go about your business?
Or you can, it's really easy just to be like, hey, it was nice talking to you. See ya.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Like there's you can just end a conversation. It's okay.
People don't know how to end conversations.
No,
like,
they're fucking terrible.
How many times I answer the phone and they ask a question and then they just hang up and I'm like, oh, well, all right. Well, this exchange is over apparently.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware.
Or like you answer their question and then there's nothing.
Yeah. And then you're just do this. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yeah, like why are you still on the phone? I don't mind if you hang up, but let's not just stand here and not do something.
All you got to do is, once you get your answer, is you say, oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
have a good day. Goodbye.
Yeah. It's not that fucking hard. But I mean, people do not understand. They don't have good conversations. They don't listen. They are not listened to. So it's just something you have to deal with. You know, people are just, you know, that's why when you find somebody who can listen or have a good conversation, or you listen, you know, like takes those social cues and knows when to stop, when to start, and things like that. You're like, wow, this is going very smoothly. How nice.
You just want to keep talking. And
what the fuck?
3 hours go by.
Yeah. But anyway, we should definitely end this because it's getting late and we've been doing this for a long time. But I appreciate this conversation. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Well,
it started off a little. Like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I appreciate. I mean, I
feel like
got
every
one
of our conversations
does this. Yeah,
it just you just got to get that one little cue, and then it just sparks.
Yep. It's good to have lots to talk about, but we will do it again. We'll try again next week. I don't know what the schedule looks like, but I'm sure maybe next
like
Thursday
little weekly episodes here will be fun.
Yeah, and we'll have to come up with some new stuff to talk about so we don't end up talking about the same stuff.
Yeah,
all the time,
I'll brainstorm a lot more. I was
Yeah.
I didn't know if we were doing like an actual recording this time or just kind of testing
sure.
equipment, so I just kind of was winging it. But
This is a test, and
Yeah.
and we'll see what it sounds like, and I'll put it on the computer, and if you want a copy of it, I can
yeah,
get it
actually
to
I
you
do.
so
That'd
you
be
can
cool.
listen
I'll
to
probably
it.
put it on my phone and just like listen to it once
Yeah.
and see how it all
Well,
turned out.
I have a bunch of extra like SD cards and stuff,
Mhm.
so I can give you a copy of it or USBs or whatever. But let's be done instead of talking about what we're gonna
Right,
do.
yeah,
Maybe. So for anybody who ends up listening to this, our very first episode, thanks for listening, and
Good night.
have a good night. Yeah.